It is your PrisonPlanet.tv memberships that fund so much of what we do here in this operation. And then we're more than happy for the TV show after it's aired live, then be leaked out onto the web to tens of millions of people. That's our goal.
Welcome to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight filling in for Alex. It is Wednesday, July 3rd, 2013. We got a lot to talk about today. This is our last show that is live before 4th of July. Tomorrow we're going to have a best of show that's put together. So today we're going to want to talk to you, the public. You know, we've said many times on this show, Alex says it all the time, you are the resistance. Well, there's a lot that should be resisted right now that the government is doing. And so I want to hear from you and find out exactly what your plans are to do, either tomorrow or in the near future. Pick a scandal. Do something about it. Do something locally. Everything doesn't come out of just Washington. There's a lot that can be done locally. We've got stories here about people working in Florida to get rid of red light cameras. I mean, you can start at that low a level, work your way up. It doesn't have to start at the top. We have so many things that are going on in Washington and have been going on in Washington. And I think when we look at the Declaration of Independence, we see an echo of what is going on today. Much of what they were complaining about, the multiplication of offices to harass the people and eat out their substance. And they go down and they list these things. We're going to talk about that. The different things that the government is doing now, essentially the same things they did then. The difference is that we have technology today that makes what the government does much more dangerous, much more comprehensive, much more difficult even to detect. And we have a government that believes that it should do everything in secret. You know, secret courts were struck down after the Star Chamber, and even the Fifth Amendment is a reaction to the Star Chamber that they had in England. It was a memory of people. They understood how tyranny worked. We have become complacent. We don't believe that it can happen here, but we have an article that we're going to be going over that we have intelligence people who have talked about exactly what is happening now, the patterns that are established. People who were with the East German Stasi say they would love to have this kind of technology at their hands in those days. And we got people who've been warning about it for 40 years. There's an article we got coming up. But in this segment, I want to talk about first, before we get on to domestic news, what's going on in Egypt. And we've got a article up on Infowars.com from Paul Joseph Watson. Egyptian protesters are blaming Obama for the Morsi dictatorship. And it's pretty amazing when you look at this. If you've got the monitor there, if you go to our website, you need to look at the collection of pictures of what people are holding up there. I'll read some of these out for the radio audience here. Wake up, America. Obama backs up a fascist regime in Egypt. The next one, Obama supports terrorism. Hey, Rachel Maddow, you know, that's the Egyptian people who are living under this understand what's going on. They disagree with you. You know, you criticized Alex Jones because he talked about how the American government, not just Obama, but Bush as well, established the Mujahideen, which turned into Al-Qaeda, how we're arming them, how we're providing for their financial benefits with the poppy seed trade in Afghanistan. That's how they fund their terrorism. And we've been conducting terrorism abroad quite a bit. And so when they fund these dictatorships, when they fund Al-Qaeda to take over Libya, yeah, Obama is supporting terrorism for sure. He's doing it in Syria as well. The next one, Obama supports dictator Morsi. We know what you did last summer. Go home to Obama Island. It's really amazing. There's even a picture here comparing how Morsi's logo looks exactly like Obama's 08 logo. And then there's a long sign here from one guy. He says, from Tahrir Square to the U.S. media and the Muslim Brotherhood. Obama, you jerk. Muslim brothers are killing Egyptians, so how come they can guarantee they can guarantee you the security of Israel. Exactly. All we're doing with our foreign policy is fomenting war and death all over the globe. We're not providing security or safety for anybody. We're going to be right back, so stay tuned. It's an exciting show today. Welcome to the Alex Jones Show. It's Wednesday, July 3rd, 2013. I'm David Knight, filling in for Alex. Now, our questions are going to be for you, really, today. We want to know what you're going to do to resist tyranny. You know, our country celebrates the Declaration of Independence tomorrow. We have fireworks that celebrate how we fought for that independence, how we won that independence. It's not given to us. You know, it was Jefferson writing to Lafayette. He said, we are not to expect to be translated from a state of despotism to a state of liberty on a featherbed. Something has to be done about that. Now, we all enjoy the time that we have with our families, a vacation time. While you're doing that, you need to be thinking about what you're going to do about the kinds of abuses of power, the abuses of authority that we see increasing and accelerating and multiplying out of Washington. And so we're going to talk to you about that. We know that there are some people who have some plans. We've got a press release that we're going to be talking about restoring the Fourth Amendment. It's going to be rallies all over the country on the 4th of July to reestablish the Fourth Amendment. There are going to be some rallies coming up in the middle of July talking about jobs and how that's going to be impacted by the proposed immigration bill. So a lot of people have picked issues. The one about protecting the Fourth on the 4th of July is a really good one. That's coming up tomorrow. So we're going to talk about that. You can see where that's going to be happening in your area. If you're involved with that, we want you to let us know about that. But one of the things that has bothered me in the past on the 4th of July, and it's why we're not going to be going to any 4th of July fireworks with my family. Last time we went, it was just such an oppressive police state. I mean, the dissonance there about getting together on a day to celebrate your freedom and independence, and instead you're surrounded by an army of cops. We went to a very small town to see a fireworks display, and we just could not believe the number of cop cars that were there. I didn't know that small town had that many cop cars. And it wasn't just cops. They had other people in kind of quasi-military uniforms with guns on. And they were just walking around like, you know, as Alex would say, you know, sticking their jaws out, you know, sticking out their chest. They were just looking for something to do, watching all of us to see if we were going to violate some rule of theirs. It was just pathetic. I've never seen anything like it. I don't want to go to a public celebration like that because of that kind of attitude. Out of Ohio, we've got an article on Infowars from Anthony Gucciardi. An Ohio city is banning fireworks, drinks, grills, and enacts a mandatory bag search for the 4th of July. And listen to this. The following rules will be in effect at Lakewood Park on the 4th of July. All generators, propane, and gas-fueled grills are prohibited. All tents and shelters are prohibited. You know how dangerous tents and shelters are. Police will be conducting searches of bags and coolers for reasons of public safety. No alcoholic beverages are permitted at any time throughout the year. No personal fireworks. This includes novelty fireworks like sparklers. No dogs or pets of any kind. And the skate park, tennis courts, and basketball courts will be closed. So, you know, I mean, it's basically, is there anything you can do there? And I'm sure they will have an army of police bugging their eyes out at everybody there to see if they're going to violate any rules. And, you know, here in Texas, around Austin, they've announced that it's going to be a no-refusal weekend. Yes, to celebrate our freedoms, the police are going to be pulling people over and demanding to draw blood from you. And if you don't, they'll just get brutal, and they'll do it anyway. They're not going to take a refusal. So if you insist on your Fourth Amendment rights and you say that you're going to refuse that, just understand that these are people. What we have here is really a standing army, isn't it? We have a standing army of cops. You know, sheriffs are elected, but the police chiefs are not elected, and they're there to enforce policy. No matter how arbitrary that policy is, no matter how capricious it is enforced, they're going to do that. And we've got a couple of stories here today. As a matter of fact, we've got a video coming up here. This happened just this last weekend, and it was in Charlotte, North Carolina. And the military was conducting an unannounced drill, as they're doing more and more frequently here, drilling in the U.S. cities. Why? Because they practice where they're actually going to be doing things. If as one military expert who was questioned about why they're doing all these military drills in the city, he said, well, if you're going to conduct operations in the mountains, you practice in the mountains. If you're going to do it at the beach, you practice at the beach. And he just left it there, right? And of course, they're not doing this for urban warfare in other countries because I don't think they expect that they're going to have the cooperation and support of the police when they invade, let's say, Syria or Iran. So this is clearly something that they're setting up for domestic use. They're buying massive amounts of ammunition. And here in Ohio, in Charlotte, they have a military drill going, and this fellow starts to film it. And take a look at this video. He sees a couple of helicopters that are coming down, so he starts filming it. And we've reduced this. So if you go to see this video, it's probably about 15, 16 minutes. We've reduced it about a minute and a half. And they're about to land here. The helicopters are coming down. And once they land, troops are going to jump out, take positions around the helicopter, and conduct this drill. And then he's got a officer who comes over to him at about the 13-minute point, which we're going to skip to. And this officer has been telling him that he needs to leave because it's not safe. And he says, I have a right to be here. It's a public area. Here it is. It's coming up. There's a couple of more helicopters still up in the air. So there's several helicopters on the ground, still more helicopters in the air. It's a fairly large... Here he is. He's talking now.
I'm breaking no laws.
All right, you just have to go.
I'm breaking no laws.
I'm trespassing at this time.
I am not. This is public-owned property, and I am not trespassing.
Look, I'm asking you to leave.
Now here's the cop.
And
this
what
is a
law
cop.
am I violating by standing here?
Trespassing.
This is public property.
This is city property.
This is city property owned by the public, and I'm breaking no
All right, well,
laws.
now, I'm telling you to leave.
Why is that?
I'm telling you to leave.
And give me a reason for that.
13-5, 25 down here in front of the road.
Give me a reason that you're asking. Hey, wait.
Now you are.
Now he takes him down. He's not going to give him a reason. The only reason he has is...
No laws. You asked me what? You leave public property?
This place has been permitted out for our use along with our...
It's not private. You did not take my property. Hey,
So what happens with this video as it goes on, the cop roughs him up, and he takes his camera out, he throws it on the ground, evidently trying to break it so they couldn't have a record of what had just happened. And you can hear the guy say, are you serious? Why are you throwing my camera on the ground? And you can just see the camera staring at the sky at that point. But basically what was happening in that video is first the military guy comes over and says, you got to leave the area. He says, it's a public area. And the military guy says, well, it's dangerous for you to be here. Well, here's my question. If it's dangerous for civilians, if it's dangerous for the public to be in a public area like that because of what the military is doing, then why is the military doing that? Why don't they practice somewhere where they are not going to be endangering the public in the first place? The public has every much a right to be there, as does the military. But of course, this is a man in uniform. And in the USA today, you're supposed to do anything anyone in a uniform tells you to do. And if you don't, they're going to get rough with you. So he doesn't listen to the military guy. The military guy calls a cop over, and basically the cop says, you have to leave. He says, why? He says, you're in the way of this. And they talk about it being he says, this is a public area. You've got to go. He goes, it's a public area. I have a right to be here. And so then he just starts throwing him around and arresting him. We see this happening over and over again, and this is something that's hopefully this guy will sue them for false arrest. We see this happening in many, many jurisdictions, and the amount of money that is going out from different city locations is just amazing because they never punish the police. Even when they do something really egregious. We had the video yesterday that I'm sure you saw that the fellow who was filming the cops doing an exercise, and once he complied with them, they came over and got rough with him. And then the dog that he had put, that he was walking with him, that jumped out of the car to protect him, and the cop just shoots the dog. It's just absolutely amazing what they do. And if you see the video, the cop is not being threatened at all by the dog. But we have other cases here that just broke out. We have a Zerbe family just won $6.5 million because they had a son who was killed because he had a nozzle in his hand. That's right. The neighbors thought that he had a pistol, but he had a garden hose nozzle in his hand. The police came up and started giving him orders. He didn't immediately comply because he wasn't sure what they were asking. And they just opened fire because they thought that he was pointing that nozzle at them. And they killed him. And the family won $6.5 million award. The mother says, the money doesn't bring my son back, which is all we wanted. And it also, the judgment also does not take these cops who did that out of service. And the police department is absolutely unrepentant on it. This is what the Long Beach police chief, Jim McDonnell, said. He was in court for the verdict, and he was disappointed by the decision. You know, they had every right to shoot somebody who pointed a garden hose nozzle at them. Their actions, we believe, were an immediate defense of their life, talking about the cops. He said, that's the way we judge, based on the circumstances known to them at the time. You see, if the police feel at all threatened, they feel that they can shoot you, their slaves. They can do anything to you. We had the case just about a week and a half ago about the young lady who was autistic, 11-year-old girl that was autistic, found wandering down the highway, and she was tasered by a police officer. Now hang on, because at the bottom of the hour, we're going to have a great rant from Gerald Celente about the state of America, and you don't want to miss that. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight filling in for Alex. It is Wednesday, July 3rd, 2013. Now, before we get started, I want to give a plug here to one of our sponsors who helps keep this operation going, and that's Infidel Body Armor. InfidelBodyArmor.com stops hundreds of rounds from AK-47, M4, 3060, 308, and more. And it is available at InfidelBodyArmor.com. That's 888-608-6605. Infidel Body Armor. That stuff is solid. I mean, it keeps taking the hits. Now, we were just talking before the break about a police judgment where they got $6.5 million for the wrongful death of a man who was merely holding a garden nozzle. We have another one coming out of Hawthorne Police Department, paid $1 million to settle a lawsuit in which it was alleged that a man was kicked in the face while handcuffed, then falsely prosecuted along with his wife to cover up the brutality. So we've got a lot of police brutality, a lot of things that the police are doing that they never get disciplined for, they never get thrown out. But we have a report here from a good cop who got up at a city council meeting and talked about an upcoming legislation that they were proposing. And listen to what he has to say. His name is Aaron Weiss, an Iraq combat vet and a law enforcement officer.
Hello, my name is Aaron Weiss, and I live in the town of Poughkeepsie. I'm a combat veteran of Iraq, and I'm also a law enforcement officer. I attended the Public Safety Committee's last meeting in regards to this resolution, but I didn't say anything because I wanted to hear what everyone else had to say. And I heard some shocking things from some people and some legislators. They said that it took a lot of courage to pass this SAFE Act. Apparently my definition of courage differs from yours. You see, if it was really so courageous a bill and it took so much courage to pass it, then why was it done in the middle of the night when no one could see it or read it? That's not courage. That's a mafia-style sit-down to divvy up what's good for the bosses. Courage is taking the right and true course of action, not the politically expedient one. And anyone who is proud of this law must also be proud of the Patriot Act, the TSA, imprisoning Japanese citizens in World War II, since all these actions were spurred on by emotional fear and rammed through in the name of public safety. Another issue is the insistence of certain people to stand on the graves of dead children and challenge those that disagree to say it to the parents' faces. Well, I, for one, will pick up that gauntlet. First off, why is dead children your battle cry? You didn't say anything about the hundreds of Chicago children being killed, and for some reason you only scream when it happens to wealthy white ones. And yes, I will say to anyone's face, my right is more important than your dead, because I fought for it firsthand. I washed the blood of my friends out of my Humvee, and I picked up their mangled bodies, and I fought day in and day out. I did more things that you people can't imagine. So yeah, my right trumps your dead. I earned it in blood. I gave up a lot for this country, including my youth, and better men than me gave up a whole lot more, so that all you, myself included, could enjoy the rights that are guaranteed to us in our Constitution and Bill of Rights. And we didn't go through all that to come back home and watch the surrender of what we fought for happen based on the demented actions of a couple madmen. So in closing, I would like to address specifically the legislators we all know who are going to vote against this resolution. I understand you will vote against this resolution based on some misguided sense of the public good. However, as a law enforcement officer, I'm curious to know about your true resolve. Since voting to take away someone's rights is totally different than being asked to enforce it, I want you to consider this. If you support the SAFE Act so wholeheartedly, are you willing to stand with law enforcement members and lead from the front to enforcement? And what I mean by that is if a constituent of yours feels so alienated by this law and the manner in which it was passed that they refuse to comply with it, are you willing to stack up on their front door and go in first? I bet if a clause was in this bill that required you, the elected leadership, our elected leaders, to go in the door first, I bet you would not be so steadfast.
That's right. And listen to this. What you don't hear at the very end of that video is that the people he was addressing there, the government officials who are proposing this gun confiscation plan, they wanted everybody to stop clapping. They really wanted to quiet that down pretty quickly. But he brings up a point. He fought. Others fought for our liberties. They put their lives on the line. And yet we're told that all they have to do today is just scare us with a possibility that we might not be safe if they don't take this away from us or that away from us or deny us of our Fourth Amendment protections or put their hands all over our bodies. We're told that they have to do that so that we can be safe. I'm reminded of that series that you see on YouTube, How It Should Have Ended. I guess that's how it should have ended in World War II. I guess they should have had a parade of all of Hitler's weapons, and we should have all looked at that and said, wow, you know, for our safety, I guess we ought to just give up and throw down and let him take over the country because, you know, we could all get hurt. That wasn't the way this country has run before, but people are all too willing to do that. Stick around. We're going to hear what Gerald Celente thinks about America in the next section. Coming right up. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight filling in for Alex while he takes some very important time to spend with his family. You know, if we don't have strong families, we are not going to have a strong country. So make sure you take some time with your family this 4th of July weekend. But we also want you to think about what you're going to do to take this country back. We're going to talk about the Declaration of Independence. We're going to talk about the militia with Dr. Edwin Vieira in our third hour. He has 4 degrees from Harvard. He's had 36 years of practicing law, specializing in constitutional law. He's argued before the Supreme Court, and he has written many books. And the most recent book that he's written is The Sword and Sovereignty. It's about the right to keep and bear arms. And from the reviews on Amazon.com, a couple of them say this is Dr. Vieira's magnum opus about constitutional militia. Another one says, ideas that I believe will scare the living daylights out of liberals. It'll scare the liberals. It'll also scare the government. But it is the Constitution, and he has a very different take on the Second Amendment. He has some important things to say about that. Well, this last week we had Gerald Celente in the studios here. It was a pleasure to meet him. I've watched him many, many times, interviewed him once, and a great guy. And he came in because he's going to be in Alex's next documentary, which we're now filming parts of. And as part of that interview, Gerald really got into it. He got very emotional. I could hear it down the hall. I didn't hear it, so I'm anxious to hear this cut that we've got from it. But I want you to hear what Gerald Celente has to say about the state of our country. It was very, very passionate, and I'm really anxious to hear this. And after this, we're going to be taking your calls, and the number is 800-259-9231. And we want to know what you're going to do to resist what's being done to us by our government unconstitutionally. Here's that clip from Gerald.
What's the solution? There are solutions. And the first solution is to remember and understand and look at what we got, how we got here, and where we're going. It doesn't take a trend forecaster to figure it out. We need a new direction and a new path. And what I want to do is begin with restoring America. I know the country wasn't great. We've had problems with slavery, and they were real. And discrimination, they're real. There were a lot of problems. They slaughtered the Indians. I know. But our ancestors came here also because it was the freest nation on earth. It was the nation where anybody from any level, from any country, any nationality could start at the bottom and go to the top. Now the rug's pulled out from us. The top is only for the 1%. There were great things about America. This was the land of equality. This was the country that nations around the world wanted to emulate. For the freedoms that we the people had, that our founding fathers fought for. It wasn't just about money and the mafia controlling everything. I want to see a restoration of America. Restore America. Look at our cities. Look at Detroit. Look at Camden and Trenton. Look at East St. Louis. Look at Oakland. Look around the country. One great city declining after another. After our presidents, one after another, sold us out. The raping of our constitutional rights and the dissemination of all the laws that would have protected us from cheap labor stealing all our jobs, taking down the trade barriers, sending our jobs overseas to communist China. When I was a kid, oh man, they hated communist China until we started doing business. Bring home the jobs, bring home the troops, rebuild America, and restore the nation with the principles of the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, and the Constitution. So how do we restore America? How do we bring it back to its greatness? All right, number one, has to start with grassroots. Has to start with you. You're the first root. To build yourself spiritually, emotionally, and physically. And I don't mean in a religious sense. Morality, the golden rule. Number two, buy local. Everything that you can. Number three, break the chains. They gave them a name, chain stores. They got you. Don't continue to support the corrupt systems. We need a new way. And the new way is the moral way. It's simple. It's as old as the Bible. It's as old as anything that you want to read or believe in. It's called the Golden Rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You know, I was in Germany opening up the Trends Journal, a German edition. It was in 2012. I was in Berlin. And as I looked at Berlin, I realized that before it was bombed out, it was probably grander than Paris. Wide boulevards. No building, probably over 14 stories, so sun was shining in everywhere. Sidewalks wide enough for cafe tables, 4 or 5 deep. People walking, and to bicycle. You walk a couple of blocks, there's greenery around everywhere. A beautifully laid out city. And I'm thinking to myself, the Germans, how did this happen? The 1930s, the Germans were at the height of Western civilization, culturally, philosophically, scientifically. I'm thinking of the German names: Bach, Beethoven, Goethe, Wagner, Einstein, Marlene Dietrich, Fritz Lang. The Germans, highly educated, sophisticated people. I said to myself, as I'm looking at these buildings, a grand building from maybe 1880, and then all new construction from bombed out World War II Germany. And then another old building. And everywhere I looked, the same thing, an old building like bookends, and new building between. I said, how could the Germans let a two-bit freak like Hitler destroy their country? Everything that took thousands of years to build was now destroyed and will never be the same. Hitler, a guy that Charlie Chaplin played better than he did, a cartoon character. And I thought to myself, I'm of Italian descent. Look at Mussolini. Look at the Italians. I mean, not for nothing. Da Vinci, Puccini, Verdi, Caruso. The names go on and on. How could they let a freak like Mussolini, destroy their country. I said, what is it in the human spirit that allows this to happen? And I was down in Chile. You may have read the story. I talked about it on the air in 2010. I was looking to get out of here. I had enough of this crap in this country. I had enough of my rights being robbed from me. I'm tired of my money being stolen from me, like people like John the Slime Corzine of MF Global. I'm tired of being taxed to the hilt while the big corporations get a free ride and these phony non-for-profits keep ripping off the system. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the nation going to war as people are starving. I'm tired of people that worked all their lives losing their homes because they can't pay their taxes. I'm ready to get out of here. I was down in Uruguay and in Argentina, ready to leave. And when I came back on April 23rd, I realized you can't run away. There are two-bit freaks everywhere. Name the country. Hey, you got one over there in France, Hollande. Hey, how about Cameron? Or do you like Blair before him? Or do you like Sarkozy? Name the country, you got your freak. This is my country. And no two-bit freak is going to run me out. If they want to, they could come and talk to me man to man. I'm staying. This is the country that my grandparents came to. This is my America. And I'm putting my money and my heart and my mind in what I believe could be the second American Revolution. That's why I bought the 1750 Franz Roggen House, the 1774 Academy, and the 1763 Dr. Jensen House, that are situated on the most historic corner in the United States of America, in colonial Kingston, New York, the first capital of New York State, the place that had its roots in the Revolution. It was burnt down by the British in 1777 and restored. And a key place, not only for the Revolution, but helping to build and rebuild America. If we had the first American Revolution with part of its roots there, we can have the second American Revolution. A revolution of the heart and the mind and the spirit and morality. Something that doesn't exist when you send drones to kill innocent people. When you allow banks to rob your savings and take your home and put you on the street. A morality that doesn't exist when they make up names like austerity measures to rob your money, raise your taxes, take your pensions and benefits away, and give them to the banksters. A morality that doesn't exist in a country that used to be the beacon of capitalism. Nothing wrong with capitalism. This ain't it. It's fascism. Too big to fail. 4 words that killed America. Too big to fail? Could you imagine the Founding Fathers buying that one? And just think of Washington, what he said about not becoming involved in foreign entanglements. Read the quotes from Madison and Jefferson, warning us in even using the terms of the money changers, the bankers, and the central banks robbing us, generation after generation. I want to go back to what the Founding Fathers believed in, what the Constitution and the Bill of Rights was about. I want to go back to the country that my ancestors came to so they can make their way and make a place in America. I've had enough of the multinationals, and I've had enough of the mafia. That's right, the mafia, the Republican and Democratic mafia, telling me how to think, what I should believe, taking my money, and if I was not courageous enough to stop them, to take my life. And that's why I'm taking you to the most historic 4 corners in the United States, colonial Kingston, to begin the restoration of America and to start the Second American Revolution. And not one of blood, not one of armies, not one of violence, but one of the heart, one of the spirit, and one of the mind. One that our founding fathers fought for, that's ingrained in the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence, that the Constitution grants us our freedoms of speech, our Second, Third, Fourth, and Fifth Amendment rights that are all being raped from us. I want them back. And that's the revolution that I'm fighting for in America. You know, people say, you know, if you don't like America, leave. You got a problem, leave. No, you got it wrong. You leave. You're the people that are destroying America. I want the original. I want the real America. And you could have it too. Begin where you are. Start restoring your community. Start restoring your cities. Start restoring America. And if you want to join me, come to Kingston and we'll restore America together.
Now you can watch The Alex Jones Show live as it happens at Infowars.com/show.
You'll find links to all of our content there and a free 15-day trial for Prison Planet TV. That was a great,
More than 60
heartfelt
movies
rant.
and documentaries.
He did a great job with that. And he, if you see this, you see that Gerald is really emotional about that. It was very heartfelt. We want to get back to the heart of America. And you can see the heart of America in its founding document and the Declaration of Independence. That's when the principles are laid down. And you know, in government school, they always have us memorize, you know, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. They stop it at that point. They stop it. They don't want you to look at the rest of it. They don't have you memorize the rest of that opening paragraph there. They don't want you to hear the rest of that. Here's the rest of it. That to secure these rights that come from God, not from government, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed, and that when any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundations on those principles. That's what we're going to be talking to you about. We want to know what you are doing. Gerald just had a Hallian call for people to get involved at the local level. Pay attention to what you're buying, who you're buying it from, but also get involved politically. There's so many different ways that you can do things, and we want to know, you are the resistance, so we want to know what you're going to do to resist this. So we've already got some people on the line. We've got Susan in Ohio. Susan, what are you going to do?
Hi, I just wanted to talk about what Gerald Valencia was saying about it being grassroots to take back the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this whole situation that happened in Hawthorne, California,
Yes.
with Leon Rodsby getting unconstitutionally arrested because he was videotaping the police, and then also them slaying his dog, shooting it 4 times, and not even having the compassion to finish the job.
Mm-hmm.
I want to start a movement for that. I have an email address for the Lieutenant Swain, and I'm wanting people to send pictures of their dogs to the lieutenant and let him know. I want them to be respectful, but I want them to let him know that this is not okay.
Sure.
Officers are here to protect us. They're not here to kill our companions. This dog lunged because an officer was grabbing the dog. It freaked him out.
Mm-hmm.
If you even touch one of their dogs, you get assault of an officer.
That's right.
If you kill one of their dogs,
That's right.
you get a felony. I mean, it's unbelievable, the hypocrisy.
That's right. Yeah,
And-
don't touch them, don't touch their dogs. And you know, when you have someone who does something like that without any compassion, hang on, we'll be right back after the break, and we're going to talk to Susan from Ohio and get that email address. But it indicates something is fundamentally wrong with that officer, that he's not qualified for that job. And we're going to talk about that right after the break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, filling in for Alex today. And we were just talking to a caller about this incident in California that was very troubling. And it's just another one of these incidences that this one was caught on video, and it's very disturbing to watch it because you watch this dog dying as the officer shoots it. But let's understand what we also talked about earlier in this show. We had a $6.5 million judgment against the police in one locality because they shot someone's son because he was holding a garden hose that had a nozzle on it that was L-shaped. I guess it looked like a gun. We had, just a week ago, we talked to someone whose daughter, 11-year-old daughter, who had autism, was wandering down the highway naked, obviously had no weapons on her, an 11-year-old girl. And the female officer tasered her, had her fall flat on the ground on her face. All of these are justified in the minds of the police based on the fact that they somehow felt threatened. Well, you know, if you feel threatened by an 11-year-old girl who doesn't have any clothes on, who's just walking alongside the road, this is not the job for you. We need to get people like that out of the police force. And if the police force won't purge people like that out of by itself, we need to get some citizens involved and some oversight. Who watches the watchers? Who keeps us safe from our public safety officers? Frankly, they're not concerned about anything but their own safety, and we see this over and over again. The dog was not threatening the officer, but of course, if the officer thinks he was being threatened, he can do anything he wishes. He's got carte blanche. What we have done is we've created a system that turns these people into not only bullies, but assassins, just shooting up the street. We saw this with Chris Dorner. They were looking for a rogue cop who was shooting officers. They got so scared they started shooting up people all over L.A. Forget the fact that they're looking for one black man. They shoot cars up that don't match the description of that car, and there are multiple women who are not black in cars. I mean, they don't, nothing about it match the description of the person that they're looking for. 2 females, not 1 male. White, not black. Car, different color, different kind of car. They just shoot it up, riddle it with bullets. And all of that is justified because they're afraid. Well, you know what? If they're that fearful, they shouldn't be in the job. And one of the things I'm concerned about with this officer that shot the dog, one of the things you always hear about serial killers is that they start with abuse of animals. They have absolutely no compassion for animals. That's why they turn eventually into serial killers. Cops who don't have any compassion, who can shoot a dog like that, cops who don't have any compassion for their fellow man, who can taser little girls, those people should not be carrying badges. And it's one of the things that underscores the idea that we should not be giving a monopoly of force to our government. We should be retaining our rights to keep and bear arms as a counter to that. Because it's just, there's absolutely no counter to that at this point. Now, she had some information about the officer's email address, suggesting that people send him an email with pictures of their dogs or write a respectful note to him. We're not going to give that out on the air, but if you want to look on Twitter, that's where she found it. So maybe you can find that yourself. We'll go to our next caller here, TJ in Alabama. TJ, what have you got?
Hey, David, how are you today?
Doing good.
Hey, David, I was going to talk about helicopters, but let me touch back on the incident yesterday with the dog. Who's watching the watchers?
Mm-hmm.
In the old United States, it used to be the press.
That's right.
But if you'll notice, nobody, if it bleeds, it leads. That's what they used to say.
Mm-hmm.
But if you'll notice, I watched all the mainstream media last night. No one covered this story.
Really?
No one. And
yeah, that's true. Well, hang on, TJ. We're going to come back to you right after the break. We're going to be taking other people's calls. We want to find out what you're going to do to resist the tyranny that we see rising in America. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight filling in for Alex. Alex is going to be with us at the second segment, about 8 after, and we're going to be talking about something that's breaking right now in Austin. We've got some unusual planes that are flying around. I've been inside the studio, so I haven't seen them. Alex is outside. He's seen them. He's going to tell us a little bit about that. Just before we were going to the break, we were talking to TJ from Alabama. We were talking about this incident yesterday with the police officer being caught on camera shooting a fellow's dog after he was unlawfully arresting that fellow who was doing nothing other than videotaping the police. And I guess the question that we were talking about, TJ, are you still there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we were talking about the fact that the media is not covering it. You said you saw absolutely no coverage of that on the media.
Absolutely none, and I monitor them all, as well as I watched the video about 50 times. David. And if you want to break it down, every info warrior, everybody out there in America should understand and get this acronym in their head. It's SJDLR. Carlos Hathcock was a famous United States Marine Corps sniper in Vietnam who used to go out by himself, and he defeated the very best Viet Cong snipers there were. But he said, when something just don't look right is when you better get ready. Because in this situation yesterday, with all these helicopters flying around in these populated areas, just look at that from a risk management standpoint. But going back to the dog shooting, if you'll notice, the two officers came out of the building. They were told, in my opinion, to go over there to where there were some people that were cuffed on the sidewalk. In my opinion, those people that were cuffed on the sidewalk were stool pigeons or were undercover, if you will, because that's normally how they do it. They'll raid a house, and then they'll take their inside people and segregate them. And so those two cops went over there to watch those people, and then when that gentleman with the dog, who was just being an American, when he was filming, they kind of, I think, said, wait a minute.
He's filming our undercover agents. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's interesting. Interesting take on that. You mentioned all the helicopters that we got flying around. Thank you, TJ. I appreciate that. We've got Alex Jones on the phone right now talking about what's flying around in Austin. Alex?
I'm going to come back from break and break this down, but as you know, I took off today to spend time with my family, and I was going to the sporting goods store downtown to take my son fishing on Town Lake, and I look up at a Boeing E-4B doomsday plane, as they're known, all white, was flying at the same level as the tallest building downtown that's 56 stories, the tallest building in Austin, and I was watching this giant E-4B, or a plane very similar to it, but I've seen the doomsday plane on television before on 9/11 circling over the Pentagon, and Anderson Cooper covered that. And I'm looking at this E-4B, and then I'm driving. So I obviously wasn't going to just start trying to hold the camera and take shots of it. Thank God it was buzzing the office so low that I'm told we have 3 different camera angles of it. So by next hour, we're going to have that raw footage off the digital cards and upload it to YouTube, and we'll put a clip from CNN of Anderson Cooper identifying it as the E-4B and then showing our E-4B. But the Austonian is the tallest building in Austin, and it's more than 50 stories. I believe it's 55, 56, I'm going from memory. I'm sitting there driving downtown, and I cannot describe what this is like. It almost made me run off the road, but I'm going 20 miles an hour in traffic, and I look up. Well, we'll go to break, and I'll come back. This is unbelievable. It's like out of a movie. There's a giant airplane, no exaggeration, maybe 500 yards from running into the Austonian. I think it's 9/11. I actually have an adrenaline rush and think this is about to fly into a building.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, filling in for Alex on this Wednesday, July 3rd, 2013. But actually, Alex is on the line with some important breaking news right here out of Austin about giant military drones. Alex, tell us about it.
I am completely blown away right now. And I called Rob Dube, and he said, oh, we know we've got 3 camera crews outside in South Austin. It is flying 1,000 feet over the building.
Wow.
Okay, so, and I thought, wow, well, let me just explain this. It looks like an E-4B, and it's white like an E-4B. A Boeing E-4B is a gigantic aircraft. There's reportedly 6 of them, and it is an aircraft only that's brought out during doomsday scenarios. That's not my quote. The Pentagon calls it the doomsday plane. Anderson Cooper calls it the doomsday plane. They have one over New York and one over Washington on video during 9/11. There it is again. Wow. There it is again. Oh, my. It's higher now. It's now at about 5,000 feet. I can't. This is like a movie. Ladies and gentlemen, okay, I'm taking off a few days. I got family in town. My son wants to go fishing, and we need some more lures. So I'm downtown. He wants to go fishing on Town Lake. He wants to go kayaking. He can go rent kayaks. So he's out with the family. I go, I'm going to go get some lures at the local downtown sporting goods store. I go over there. We live outside town, so it's like a vacation for us to go into town. So we're vacationing the next few days in downtown Austin. Okay, so imagine I'm driving downtown by the Austonian, and I literally had like flashbacks to 9/11. I look up, and there's the biggest plane I've ever seen, because you're seeing it in person, at the level of the Austonian. This is going to be a national news story, folks. We've got to get our team to race our video out. I guarantee you the phones are ringing off the hook at all the local TV stations on this. I look up, and it didn't register at first that there was a plane so big, because it was like maybe 1,500 feet off the ground. This is totally illegal for a Cessna to fly like this downtown. It's controlled airspace.
Right.
I look up, my dad's a pilot. I know about this stuff, basic stuff. I look up, and I obviously have my cell phone, but I'm driving downtown, so it's out of my sight in like 5 seconds. I look up, and it's, but it's not even going that fast. Huge plane, but it disappears behind more buildings. So then I drive a little bit to the edge of town to go to the sporting goods store. By the way, I didn't even do that. I pulled over. I'm sitting here in a parking lot, hyperventilating. This is like 15 minutes ago now. Calling my reporters going, this sounds crazy. There's a giant E-4B flying, in circles around downtown at the level of a 55, 56-story building, the Austonian, the biggest. It was level. So now I'm on the edge of downtown, the cluster of buildings, sitting here at the sporting goods store, looking at it, and now it's at about 5,000 feet circling out at North Austin, and it did 2 circles by the building. But you'd wonder, like it would go by, because it's in such tight circles. There it is again. Now it's off at even higher off in the distance. Oh, my God, there's more military aircraft. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, there's helicopters. So I call the office. He goes, is this what your car is talking about helicopters too? And people are calling the office, and there's helicopters. There's now green C-130s. I think I should probably even get off the air and try to videotape this. And a giant E-4B, and I'm telling you, was like 1,000 feet, not above, off to the side, away from running into skyscrapers in Austin, Texas. And then you guys say you have it at like 1,000 to 1,500 right over the deck in South Austin, where you're at.
There it is. There's some pictures of it right now up on, if anybody's watching. Right there, you can see it. If you're watching our video feed, you can see pictures of the plane that we've taken. Looks like it looks like an airliner. It's huge.
It's giant. The one I saw is white. Is it white?
Yes, it's white.
Yeah, because there's now more aircraft. I'm now seeing aircraft that looks like at 5,000 feet, right above the tree line, green C-130s, and I just saw, I don't even want to say this on air, looks like some type of stealth helicopter. Man, this country is in trouble.
Yep,
That's
absolutely.
all I tell you. We're getting all these calls about helicopters and military and tanks on the streets and troops, and I think this is some type of invasion.
There's no markings on it that we can see. We've got a pretty good video shot of it here that's being played on the video feed, and there's no markings that we can see.
Let me throw this out at people. They can all just click. Remember when Homeland Security did a drill and said it was classified and terrorized New Yorkers 2 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
It flew a military jumbo jet through the middle of downtown?
Yeah.
Guys, search engine that. New Yorkers scared by Homeland Security plane drill. And they wouldn't say what it was about. And it was a way to reinvoke 9/11, it came out, and to test the public. It's all clicking right now. They are buzzing, or they were buzzing. Now they're off further away. Now when I see them, they're very small. They are buzzing South Austin, North Austin, and downtown. It did at least 2 circles. And I guarantee you, people are tweeting this. There's video. I bet this will be on the news within the hour on News 8 Austin. Okay, if anybody's doubting me, this will be on the news when a gigantor Boeing aircraft, E-4B,
Alex,
Yes.
We have Edwin Vieira joining us on the third hour, and I just wanted to read you something about what he talks about modern state terrorism. He says, most recently, the theme has shifted to the utterly discordant note that Americans must fear their own government, most of all, but that they can do nothing about its ever more abusive inroads into their remaining freedoms because, with all of the political, economic, and military power at its disposal, the government cannot be effectively opposed no matter what excesses it may commit. Don't you think this is really kind of a in-your-face psyops?
There is no doubt. See, as I'm sitting here trying to absorb all this, because again, I was terrorized. I looked up and saw a huge white plane where I could see the bottom metal rivets glinting. I mean, it was like, imagine you're driving along to go buy fishing gear, like, oh, crap, we forgot, catfish bait. My son wants to fish for that in the river. And I'm just driving, and all of a sudden, it's this huge plane, and then it comes back, and my adrenals are completely shot right now. And then I just remembered New York, where they did it as a psyop 2-3 years ago. Have you guys found that yet?
Yeah, we got the article up there right now. It was, the headline is, White House apologizes for Air Force flyover. So it's conducted without any notification to the public. Can you guys scroll it up a little bit?
And they used big passenger jets. I believe they may have even used an A-4B. The point is, this is a psyop. The military doing this, you're absolutely right. It is to condition us that they're God. They always build big government buildings, so you feel small. They wear the black uniforms. They admit to intimidate. And now it's just get used to helicopters. Get used to, listen, I saw some weird-looking helicopter flying around. And I was looking at it probably 3-4 miles away, so I just saw it over the tree line. It's like War of the Worlds or something. I mean,
right. It's like that quote I read earlier from Edwin Vieira, and he continues on to say, it has the advantage for the government of bringing in discussion to concordance with the true meaning of words like the definition of terrorism. He says it's really government by intimidation and the psychotic nature of the national debate being foisted upon us, namely that at least according to the elitists and their touts, America's only defense against terrorism is to acquiesce into the worst sort of terrorism.
But listen, it's a explicit threat, not even thinly veiled. They go, yeah, it isn't for Al-Qaeda. We run them.
Yeah.
Homeland Security's for gun owners, libertarians, returning veterans.
That's right.
Patriots, and now they say it's for us. And here's the key to all of this. We should get the AC/DC song, Walk All Over You, because or the Nancy Sinatra, these boots are going to walk all over you, because they're walking all over us. This was so dangerous.
Yes.
There's no reason to have a Gigantor E-4B literally flying right through the buildings. I mean, I'm saying right by them at the same level as the Austonian. And then I drove away and thought, that was insane. I was shocked. Like, what is this? And then I'm looking from the edge of town right now, and it's flying at level, was flying. It came back and was flying, I'm talking thousands of yards maximum. I mean, maybe 3,000 feet, maybe 1,000 yards. And I'm not saying even above it. It was flying by it. I cannot describe to you. And then it came back and did, it's like first they terrorized with a really close pass. Then it was a little higher, and then a little higher. So people then go, oh, okay, it wasn't that bad. So they probably even had news cameras out to catch it when it was even higher to run the psyop and say, oh, we were 1,500 feet above the buildings. It's safe.
Right.
I'm telling you, I'm trying to gauge, because the same thing was in New York. It flew through the buildings to buzz people, terrorizing them. This is meant as a psyop to re-invoke 9/11. And that's why we're getting the calls from around the country. They're probably doing this in Chicago and L.A. and Miami right now. I know enemy operations, folks. This is to psyop us. David Knight, what do you think they're getting us ready for?
More of the same. I think it's going to be another false flag. We had an article actually a video that we showed just this last weekend. They had a lot of helicopters landing in Charlotte, and a fellow was filming them there, and the military officer came over and said, you need to leave because it's not safe here. Well, it's not safe there because they're conducting military operations on public areas. And he said, I have a right to film you.
They use that as, it's your safety we're coming to your house.
Right.
Your safety, we've got Russian troops here. And by the way, I need to probably come back and You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and I don't know what to do at this point. I mean, I need to respond to the Russia. The national Russian media came out, and they're the ones that said they were going to be overseeing events here. But FEMA said, well, they've always been doing it for 17 years, but they won't be physically, doing stuff to Americans. Again, it's all part of the acclimation.
That's right.
All part of the acclimation at this point. But listen, Paul Watson.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, filling in for Alex, and we've got Alex on the line with some breaking news about low flyovers of a Boeing E-4B, what apparently is a Boeing E-4B. It's the size of a, looks like a commercial airliner flying at heights that are below the levels of the buildings in Austin. And Alex is out of the office, and he's got an eyewitness report on that. We've also got some footage that was captured because they're circling all around Austin at the moment. Alex?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, I called to talk to Drew, and you guys were already on it because it was flying right over the office. And I just want to explain, now that I've had time, this was developing, to really think about this. They are doing this all over the country with helicopters and jets and even B-2 bombers and B-1 bombers, mainly B-1 bombers, flying low and at high speeds, low and at slower speeds through the buildings. Mm-hmm. And this, what appeared to be an E-4B, you guys have the clear footage of it, so compare it to that. You can confirm if it's an E-4B and then tell Watson, who's writing the article right now, does it appear to be an E-4B? As it looked to me, to my eye, David Knight?
Well, I don't know what an E-4B looks like. I need to see some footage comparing it to it, but we've got some really clear footage.
All you do is search E-4B, Boeing, E-4B, Doomsday plane, and then compare it to the aircraft. I believe it's an E-4B.
Yeah, the crew says that the crew has done that, and they say it is an E-4B. They have done the search, and they say it is.
The only white E-4Bs are Doomsday planes. There is no reason for this. This is to run shadow government. Now it just clicked. They flew. The plane flew from the east, the first pass, over me in downtown. Literally, I can handle a lot of stuff, folks. This was, I look up at a giant aircraft at the level of the tallest building going through downtown. It turned and went over the Capitol. It went north over the Capitol, turned. I almost ran off the road trying to get a shot of it, I'll be honest with people. And then I pulled back and just pretty much shaken by adrenaline, drove more to the west, to the sporting goods store. And before I even got there, it was like, there it is again. By the time I parked, I was unable to see it circle at a higher level above the city. And then saw C-130s, other white aircraft out over what looked like north of Austin or North Austin. And then a weird, shiny, I just can't even believe this, stealth helicopter is what it looked like the thing that reportedly in the stupid fake Bin Laden raid looked similar to that. I mean, this is bizarro. And I'll guarantee you Austinites have seen this, have tweeted this. We need to get that for confirmation because the national media, if we're the only ones that report, will say this didn't happen. So, A, we need to put out the raw footage first in a video as soon as they can. Dump it out, the best close footage you got from the office. At the end of it, so people know it's an E-4B, show a Wikipedia of an E-4B, then show Anderson Cooper for 10 seconds just saying, above the Pentagon, E-4B Doomsday plane from 9/11, so people understand what it is. That's the report. Put it out on our YouTube. Every next hour at the end of the show, we should have it done, or you can go into overdrive so Edwin Vieira can comment on it. And then I need Paul Watson. Other great writers are wonderful as well, but I know Watson's listening. He can really churn stuff out. Our ace reporter over there, I know, is listening. Show how it's a replay of the Homeland Security order in the Air Force for the large passenger jet to buzz New York a few years ago. What was that, 2 years ago?
I believe so.
So send that to Watson or give that headline out for him and explain that even New Yorkers later said they think it was a psyop. It's meant to re-invoke 9/11. And literally, I was just terrorized, folks. If you've not been, and I'm hardly ever downtown, maybe once every 2 weeks, but I've never gone and vacationed for a couple days downtown, because I live in the country outside Austin, so it's like country mouse comes into big city mouse. I mean, by the grace of God, I was in the middle of this to experience what it's like to look up, and I'm talking, at the level of the tallest building, however tall 56 stories is, it was at that level. I mean, I saw the full bottom with all its jet engines, and I was like, I thought it was about to fly into buildings. And this is unbelievable abuse of the American people.
Absolutely.
And unbelievable abuse of Texas. And I want the Texas legislature and Rick Perry, I want Obama told. Remember they threatened F-16s to shoot down any aircraft that flew in here if we kicked the TSA out of Texas?
That's right.
I am being terrorized by the New World Order. We're all being terrorized. I'm going to hand the show back over to you, but I want these reports out quickly. Watson, you get your report out. Send Watson still shots off our video to have it. Tell people video coming. Still shots that can be sent to Watson right now. Get them up, tweet them out on the Real Alex Jones. Get our blur them out. And I'm sure the all-powerful Brunch will get it out. But this is big news, guys. Hammer it out right now, okay?
Well, that's Alex Jones with breaking news about flights in Austin. They're flying an Boeing E-4B at a very low level, below the building levels. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, filling in for Alex. We've got Alex on the line here, but just before we go to him, I want to remind you that eFoods Direct has a special that is effective through July the 10th. It's buy 3, get 1 free, plus free shipping, and that's only until July 10th. That's efoodsdirect.com/Alex or 800-409-5633. We've got Alex on the line because we've got an incident developing here in Austin, Texas. We've got some footage of a Boeing E-4B that is making circling low flyovers over Austin. And Alex was actually downtown, saw it flying at building level. And he's giving us his commentary on it. Alex, are you there?
Absolutely. I was so flustered by this happening now about 30 minutes ago, and it was still ongoing just a few minutes ago, to a lesser extent. I guess they're buzzing the entire city in quadrants, including downtown. But I was so flustered I didn't remember that I've got great audio Skype now on my iPhone. So does this sound better, David Knight?
Sounds much better.
Okay, let me give people a clear, concise report, because I know how they'll spin this. They'll say, oh, we apologize. It was just a military flight. Don't worry about it. Look, this was consciously played out. This was done in New York City a few years ago and was big national news and terrorized people. And everybody's been terrorized with the images a million times, literally a million times. Hundreds of thousands of times we have been hammered with the images of the planes flying into the towers. And this isn't just some regular Air Force aircraft or Homeland Security. This is the doomsday E-4B that they've got 5 or 6 of. Some estimates are 5, some are 6. It's very classified. But they admit that this carries the shadow government, and that this aircraft can also be flown by remote control if the whole government's knocked out. They reportedly got them parked in other countries and they can take off. So for all we know, it's a giant drone. This is the shadow government flying NORAD, flying Cheyenne Mountain, flying Mount Weather, Site R. Well, this has got NSA clicking right now. The shadow government aircraft came within thousands of feet of smashing into Austin buildings. So, and again, this will just be put out like it's no big deal. Just like they admit, this is admitted, that they have urban warfare drills all over the country to acclimate the public, and they admit Brigade Homeland. And you know what? Alex Jones was right 17 years ago, 18 years ago. They say, we are going to use military on the streets. Army Times reports it. We are training the Boy Scouts to, quote, fight terrorists and more. New York Times training them, this was 4 years ago, they're now 18, to, quote, kill veterans and take their guns. New York Times, folks, New York Times. You know, now I had cops calling in going, yeah, I don't want to work with the Russians, but I guess if they tell us to. You know, this is, and then I have the Russian government respond and go, well, this is FEMA. We have signed a deal to help you at your events. And then FEMA goes, well, for 17 years we've already done it. Like it's okay, they're now admitting it. I mean, understand Infowars.com and Drudge Report magnifying, you know, the power of 10, what we put out with the Russian news and this occupation is now really upsetting the globalists. And I don't know what the deal is with this happening in Austin completely, but I know the feds have told Texas, the legislature 2 years ago, they said, if you pass a law saying the TSA can't grab your genitals, we will do an Air Force blockade with F-16s. This was USA Today, folks. Look it up. And we will shoot down commercial airliners that try to enter Texas. This is This is how
That's
the
right.
Civil War started, when they wouldn't let the South use its ports. So this is blockades, like we're Syria or something, or like we're Iran. Well, if they want to do a blockade of Iran, that'd be an act of war. We are blockaded. They've already terrorized New York. They're terrorizing cities all over the country where thousands of troops land and run around with live fire, and they try to film it. They arrest you. This is a psyop. This is a big deal.
Absolutely.
Again, I'm driving downtown, and directly over me, imagine, at, I don't know, 1,000, 1,500 feet. I mean, it was at the level of buildings. I look up, and full view. This is like when you go park at the end of the airport. I'm sure everybody's done this when you were in high school. Take your girlfriend, park at the end of the airport. Back in the old days where the cops would harass you, there'd be 10 cars out there, you know, at the airport. Everybody's, you know, in the back seat or whatever, and jets are flying over. This is like that when you're at the end of the runway and the jet takes off, and it's like that, you know, and you see the wheels going up. But this was maybe twice as high as that, or if you park further back from the airport, 1,000, 1,500, whatever, however high that building is, because, again, it came back after I'd gotten out from the buildings, and I saw it fly at the level. And, David, this was so over the top, I could not believe my eyes. I called Dew, and I go, you're not going to believe this. There's an E-4B buzzing downtown, like they buzz the deck of an aircraft carrier, you know, these hot shots.
Right.
I said, this is not some crazy guy in an F-18 doing this who's going to get court-martialed. This is the shadow government, New World Order command base, literally just buzzed me an hour ago now, 45 minutes ago, and literally was, if they would have made one error, you would have had a new 9/11, ladies and gentlemen, in Austin, Texas, with a shadow government E-4B literally devastated. And this thing was so big. You know, the World Trade Centers were so giant, the planes look small. Our buildings are tall, 40, 50, 55 stories, but they're not wide. This thing was bigger than the tallest building in Austin, wider. You know, I mean, not overall bigger, but when I watched it the second time, you know, again, when it wasn't right over me, I'd driven a few minutes. I saw it go back through the buildings, right above the buildings.
So, Alex,
is the behind him?
Is the E-4B, is it bigger than a commercial airliner? How does it compare in size?
It's gigantic. Yeah, it's bigger than a 777, which I just flew in back from England. It's bigger. It's got more engines. It's got bigger wings. It's like a modern super B-52 basically.
Wow.
I mean, it is just gigantic. And so again, you guys are in South Austin. I haven't seen the photos you're showing people on TV right now, you know, radio listeners.
Right.
All I'm saying is, as fast as you can, get the images up, get a blurb out. I bet Watson's already done it. And have we sent Watson still shots of this yet? Because I want to look at it.
They're working on it. I think they've been in contact with Watson. I think he's got what he needs.
Yeah. All you do is you put the video up on screen, and the Apple, you just do screenshots and then send him that.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure they've done it. They all know. I've got like 10 video people. I'm sure it's been done.
Yeah. Dew's listening.
But I mean, I need my team to be feeding Watson everything right now. But I just wanted to put this out before they put it on KXAN and News 8 and go, there was kind of a scare today, but it was just Homeland Security doing tests. You know, we're going to, you know, have black helicopters come out of town and blow up a school at the end of town. It's no big deal. You're a kook if you don't like it. We're going to have troops do live fire in your streets. We're going to land an Apache helicopter at your local school. They've done that in Austin. I've got photos of it. This is just ongoing, just getting us used to the shadow government doing whatever it wants.
Absolutely. I think that the whole, I think the NSA leaking that's been done via Ed Snowden, you know, not necessarily saying that he's a part of it, but this is a guy that's worked for them for a long time. They know what his psychological profile is. They know if they give him opportunity to put this stuff out there, he will. I think what we've had revealed there is really psychological operation. It's an intimidation to put that out there to get us accustomed to it.
Yeah, it's like, you know what, we are watching you.
Yeah.
And
there's nothing you can do about it.
And this man's a criminal that told you. And what Snowden's really in trouble for is saying it's wrong.
Yeah.
They'll all brag and admit they're listening to us. They'll have articles where the Army's going, yeah, we got a model of the world. Everything you do is in it. You know, they had the New York Times back in 2001 on the Total Information Awareness Network. And it was an article interviewing General Poindexter, the felon. And he goes, yeah, we're watching and listening to every phone call you make. Exactly. They're just throwing it in our face and now buzzing us with the shadow government again, this is not just an Air Force jumbo jet or Galaxy buzzing Austin. This is the shadow government. Look, DHS, Pentagon, here's the headline. Pentagon doomsday jet buzzes Austin skyscrapers. I mean, this is unprecedented. And then I saw C-130s out north of Austin and a weird high-tech gleaming helicopter. Like, it looked like, this is bizarre. I mean, I don't know what they're doing overall. I mean, why would they have other green C-130s and then a weird helicopter? I mean, what's that, David Knight? Just
well,
and again,
it is just before the 4th of July. You know, they don't want the slaves to get any kind of uppity notions about independence or freedom or anything like that. We got to remember who the boss is, right?
Well, they're now saying they're watching everyone buying fireworks. See, everything's terror, except the real terrorists, the foreign banks that have hijacked America, and they're just going to condition us and condition us and condition us and condition us. Hey, have the guys told you that, yes, they've sent Watson screenshots?
Yes, they said they're in contact with Watson.
They're in contact with him, or have they screenshotted him?
Guys, have you sent screenshots to Watson? They're checking. Yes, they have, they said. Yes, they have.
Okay, good, because everybody's doing a great job, but this is big enough where maybe I should just come in there. I mean, I'm already here, you know, via audio. It's just that I don't think I can go back to not working now that I saw this happen. I mean, look, again, take the best shots we've got of it buzzing the office, and dude was saying it would look like about 1,000, 1,500 feet. I talked to Zakari. He said the same thing. He said this was just amazing. And let's just quick clips, just different shots of it above the office.
Right.
Explain in the article that the Infowars office is about, what is it, 7 miles from downtown. So we're out south. And explain in the article, Watson, because I know he's listening, it looks like the timeline is it first flew around South Austin, did circles. Then it flew around downtown and did circles. Then it moved to northeast and did circles. And then it moved to central north and did circles. And then I saw it again just a few minutes ago over the tree line, way far off, but at a higher level, with like 5,000, 6,000 feet, doing circles over northwest Austin. So it's going around buzzing everywhere in Austin. But you can say, okay, they flew at 1,500 feet above houses. That's still weird. Why is the Doomsday plane doing that? Again, the criminal action. It's, you know, we had a 4th of July 7 years ago at my wife's parents, and they live close to downtown by Lake Austin, and they had a B-1 bomber, and it was in the newspaper it was going to do it, that came from an Air Force base in West Texas where they've got them. I think they just retired them finally. Bat-winged, you know, swept-wing aircraft. It came in slow with its wings out, turned up the river, put its wings back, and hit the afterburners and flew up the Colorado, where it totally, and it's meant with ground radar to, you know, with the ground scanning radar to be able to do that, and it flew at about, I don't know, 800, 1,000 feet down the river and disappeared. It flew in slow, turned over the city at about 3,000 feet, very safe flight pattern, turned around, everybody cheered.
Well, I think we just lost Alex there. It's absolutely amazing when you stop and think about the fact that, as he mentioned, it started out in South Austin, which is not too far from the commercial airline, the airport here. To think that they've got a large plane that's larger than a commercial airliner just flying looping circles at a very low altitude for whatever their purpose is, whether it's a photo op or whether it's an intimidation op, we don't really know. But it's pretty irresponsible that the government would do something like that. But it's pretty irresponsible, everything that they're doing. You know, this is not anything new, actually. This is just starting to come out, what's happening with these different things. There's an article that we've got on Infowars.com. High-level U.S. government officials have warned for 40 years that mass surveillance would lead to tyranny in America. And there's some interesting quotes on there, and we'll get right back to those. But we've got Alex back on the line. Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, my wife called up asking where I'm at and why I'm not fishing with the children, and then it made it made this new incredible Skype system called Lucy that works even better than a normal Skype. Just to put a plug in for them, they're not a sponsor, but this is a really phenomenal system. If I put a better microphone on here, it'd be like I was in studio. She called, so it cut out. My point is, They brought a B-1 bomber in. It swept over the river far away from, downtown, and then turned on its afterburners and shot down the Colorado in a safe manner. This was the Doomsday craft, or something identical to it, a big white E-4B. Literally, listen, when it came back around the second time, it was a little bit higher, but then it turned and went lower through an opening in buildings and buzzed the Capitol.
Right.
I mean, this is, again, I know I keep ranting about this. This is unprecedented PSYOP. Because if we'll put up with this, David, and all the urban warfare drills, and I've had troops come up at drills and say, turn your cameras off. Hebron, Maryland, California, you name it. It goes on and on. This is a giant PSYOP. There is no doubt. And I'll bet my bottom dollar they're going to start doing this in cities all over the country.
Oh, yeah?
And I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm going to leave it at that and let you take over and finish up. But great job to the amazing crew at Infowars.com. And great job to the listeners and our sponsors and our supporters. Please go to efoodsdirect.com/Alex. Everybody needs to be prepared. Everybody needs to get the, buy 3, get 1 free and free shipping. They've never offered a deal that good. And again, they've extended it to the 10th of July. Please get the new magazine that says America has been occupied by globalist forces, Infowars.com. 10 bumper stickers, 6 medium size, 4 big ones. Let's get aggressive. We've been occupied. Look, if they can occupy us and train us to accept this, and in America, a guy films police 60 yards away, so they come over with MP5 hecklers and shoot his dog after they have arrested him. I mean, they can do anything. We are occupied. They're ordering the police and military to occupy us. Most police have woken up because of this. The military's waking up. But they're getting rid of those guys and bringing in crazies. We are one giant Fallujah now. This is a PSYOP. The government says the #1 enemy is the American people. It's not our government. Please support Infowars.com. Please support PrisonPlanet.com. Please, this 4th of July, go to events and talk about the New World Order occupation. Go out with picket signs and say America's been occupied by the New World Order. Why do they say we're the enemy? Because we're the real Americans that know about the occupation. You're living in a real slow-motion, Red Dawn globalist takeover. They know that we know how to resist them when they kill us and occupy us hard in a hot war. That's why they use a Cold War. They're killing us with soft kill. They're killing us softly. We are in a New World Order takeover. It's all real. As crazy as this sounds, it's real. And they want to acclimate you and you in a position of learned helplessness where you just accept this so they can bring us down, so they can destroy us, and just have it no big deal that secret government black ops command planes fly in between skyscrapers in Austin, Texas, totally illegally. If a normal pilot did this, you'd be arrested. Folks, this is so illegal, so criminal, and they're just setting the precedent that they can violate state sovereignty and violate safety and crash their black helicopters into buildings in Houston like they've done with Delta Force dying. Only Soldier of Fortune reported on that 15 years ago. This is ongoing, broad daylight PSYOPs as the New World Order basically harasses Austin, Texas. This is disgusting. So please support us and support our sponsors and just spread the word. God bless you, David Knight.
Well, thank you, Alex. We're going to be right back. And at the beginning of the next hour, we're going to have with us Edwin Vieira. He's going to be talking about how he sees the Constitution, talking about constitutional militias. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, filling in for Alex. We have Alex on the line with some breaking news. Alex?
Absolutely. I'm able to turn off the Skype and then listen to the internet. It's a few minutes delayed on the free iPhone app. And for the radio show, and hear myself getting upset. I want to explain to people that there's hundreds of different types of psychological warfare, and I have studied them all. I have gone and read their own source documents. This stuff's public, because the public is so childlike, the enemy just puts it out in the open. I use good old-fashioned common sense truth, because it trumps everything, but only if people are conscious and awake. So let me explain something to people, what this E4B is all about. I'm going to give you really the secret to the whole New World Order. Police, military, all of you, nobody's more brainwashed than you. People in the CIA, nobody's more spied on and controlled than you. Okay, and I'm here to set the captives free, folks. I'm here to unlock your mind. I want you to listen to probably the most important thing I've ever explained on radio. When sailors would show up on deserted islands that had sheep or goats left on them, or if they showed up at an island that had dodo birds on it, is a famous case. The animals for generations had never been hunted. So even though they originally had instincts to be afraid, because they'd seen no humans, they weren't afraid of them. Well, you can also do that in domestication, where you just are around animals all the time, and they get to where they're not afraid of you. If you're in a city, deer come up and get in your front yard. If you're out in the country, they don't, because they know you may be shot. This is what's happening in one form of mind control, of acclimation. The average military person isn't involved. Even the average FBI person isn't involved. They'll just be told, oh, it was some drill. And it gets you used to just having a giant secret shadow government aircraft almost run into buildings to set the precedent that they can do whatever they want. And we already talked about this, but because no one dies, because no one gets killed, people then just get accustomed to the Army drills, the live fire drills, the checkpoints, the TSA touching you. It's prisoner training. It gets you ready for more and more and more. And, oh, the Russians are just training here. Oh, now they're going to be at public events. Oh, well, they won't really be, but they'll be helping some. On and on and on. So this is how they do it. And you see an escalation of it because they want to have a hot war now with the American people. And they want to just go, okay, the plane flew over. Alex says it's the secret government. And then instead of the event being what's kooky and bad, it's that I'm saying there's a problem when the local news won't say there's a problem, and the talking heads and the newspaper reporters won't say it's a problem.
Yeah, we're seeing the same thing happen, Alex. We're seeing the same thing happen with this FEMA agreement with the Russians that we saw happen with the ammunition agreement a year ago. You know, in both cases, Watson goes out, does some great research, finds the documents, makes it public. It gets picked up by Drudge and the other alternative media. And then the government and the mainstream media pushes back, oh, no, that's not what it says. That's not what it means. That's not what we're going to do. They're now saying that even though the memo said that the Russians are going to be providing security at mass events, no, they're not really going to do that. They're not really going to be here.
Well, it's the same thing like they did with drones. Yeah. 2 years ago, we wrote about how they had drones spying on farmers. And they said we were liars in over 1,000 papers in one day. Drudge is a liar. Kurt's a liar, we're all liars, and then they come out and go, yeah, actually, we've been spying on you with drones. Again, it's a psyop to just make you think they can get away with anything. This is how Hitler did it, how Lenin and Stalin and Mao did it. Folks, this is a formulae. So you've got to get out in the streets, you've got to get aggressive politically, you've got to demand that they apologize and say they'll never do this again. Because if you don't, then they'll just start doing it more and more and more. I mean, look, I used to get calls, hey, black helicopters, crashed or blew something up. And I would say you're a kook until I went and saw it for myself because the media wouldn't even cover it. They were testing to see if they could even get the media to not cover, in some cases where they had Marines running real checkpoints.
That's right.
And arresting people. Look, great job. Edwin Vieira coming up. Folks, this is a big deal, and you tell the corporate whore media that you want to see them say it's a bad thing as well.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight filling in for Alex, and if you've been listening to the last hour, you know that we have a breaking situation here in Austin with the E-4B, the Boeing E-4B. It's a much larger plane than a commercial airline plane. It's been flying in circles around Austin, flying at very low levels in the downtown area. Actually, Alex saw it at below the tops of the buildings level, flying through the buildings like we saw happen in New York a couple of years ago. The question is, what does it all mean? Is it just intimidation? Why are they doing this? It certainly is reckless behavior, and it's been going on for quite some time. We've got footage of it that we're going to be putting up so you can see it. Now, what are you going to do about it? We want to take some of your calls, and we were going to take a lot more of them, but with that breaking news, we didn't get to all of them there. You can see on the video feed right now footage that we captured here at Infowars of the giant plane flying around. Now, one of the things that you can do tomorrow is go to a protest, Restore the Fourth. It's an organization that is holding protests in over 100 cities across America to demand that the government of the United States adhere to its constitutionally dictated limits. How about that? And respect the Fourth Amendment. You can find out information about that by going to Restore the Fourth. They spell it out, F-O-U-R-T-H, restorethefourth.net. Find out if there's a place to do a protest there. And, you really should get out because there's been a lot more protests about NSA spying in Hong Kong than there have been in the United States. I don't know of any that I've seen that have been protesting that in violation, the massive violation of our Fourth Amendments. We've had a lot of people who have been hanging on the phone to talk to us for quite some time. We've got Jason in California who's been on for over an hour. Jason, what have you got to tell us?
Hi, I wanted to tell everybody about a new idea that I found online to give out information to people. It's called a dead drop. You can look this up online at deaddrops.com. Basically, the idea is you take a memory stick or a hard drive and you implant it somewhere in a public place so people can share information with each other anonymously and offline. I have 3 ideas that I think we could use to help our little situation out. The first one is to obviously use and expand their current dead drop system that is online. You can check it out. The second would be to make private dead drop systems, so local communities and groups can talk to each other without anybody else knowing about it, and they can back up data that's sensitive without anybody else knowing about it. And third was basically talk to local businesses and groups and try to get them to install like memory sticks in their businesses or their churches or whatever that basically tell everybody about the information that they want to share with everyone.
Absolutely.
And I think that could be a very useful tool for everyone out there.
That'd be great. That's a great idea. Thank you. You know, it's kind of like envelopes. Why do we use envelopes? Well, it's because there's sometimes there's things there that we would like to have private. There's personal financial information we don't want to be made public, or private conversations that we want to have with people. It doesn't mean that we're evil. It doesn't mean that we have anything to hide. The only people who want to hide everything is the government. And, you know, it was Stephen Colbert who pointed out the hypocrisy of that one. Pretty famous tweet not too long ago saying, yeah, if you got nothing to hide, then why are you doing these secret these secret things the government is doing? We got also Jason in Florida. Jason, you still there?
Hey, I want to have a second to respond to Susan. She called in about the police officer shooting that dog.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't want to send him pictures or love letters or anything. I want to sue the guy, and I want to sue the
That's
city.
Right.
I was thinking, you know, you've heard of a legal defense fund. Why can't we have a liberty defense fund?
Good idea.
In other words, I mean, it would be, you know, you go, let's say you just get a domain name, libertydefensefund.com.
That's a great idea.
Totally crowdfunded. Funded by the listeners. Send $1, send whatever you got.
Great idea, Jason. And you know what? We need to make sure that when people win in these lawsuits, that it doesn't just come out of the taxpayer's pocket. It ought to come out of the police department's budget. That'd be one way to keep them in line. We're going to be right back with Edwin Vieira, so stay tuned. He's going to talk to us about militias. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight here on this Wednesday, July 3rd, 2013. Now, we were just talking with Alex about the, I guess you could call it the PSYOP operation that's going on here, this military drill where they're flying a giant, larger than a commercial airliner, this giant plane, a Boeing E-4B, through the building skyscrapers downtown Austin, circling around at very, very low, very dangerous levels. And we were also talking about the NSA, of course. That's been a topic for quite some time. We have a new sponsor, privateinternetaccess.com. You know, you hear stories every day about the NSA spying on U.S. citizens. This is a way to keep your information private. It will encrypt your internet connection. It'll hide your IP address so you can browse anything anonymously. It offers firewall protection to prevent data mining. And it eliminates records of your computer activity. That's privateinternetaccess.com, an American company. So check that out. That's a sponsor of ours that helps us support the operation. Now, we have on the phone with us Dr. Edwin Vieira. Now, he has 4 degrees from Harvard. He has 36 years of practicing law, specializing in constitutional law. He has argued before the Supreme Court, and, of course, he is an author. And his most recent book is The Sword and Sovereignty. It's about the right to keep and bear arms, but he has a little bit different take on it. He focuses more on the militia as opposed to an individual right to keep and bear arms. So we're going to talk to him about that. Very interested to hear his comments on that, and also about his participation in an upcoming documentary called Moulin Labe, which is, of course, the Greek for come and take it. It's what the Spartans told the Persians when they said to disarm, and he's doing that with in conjunction with James Yeager. And I believe, Dr. Vieira, you're one of the associate producers on that. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, super. Now, you know, we hear people talking about the Second Amendment. People have defended it on pragmatic means, talking about, we have a right to collect these things. We like to keep them like we like to keep cars. Or they talk about the fact that they would like to do sporting events, target shooting, hunting with it. Or they talk about the fact that they have a right to protect themselves from burglars or anybody who might attack them. But we realize that there's really a strategic importance for the Second Amendment, and that is to protect us from a tyrannical government. And Dr. Vieira has a different take on that, saying that this is essentially a collective right. Is that correct, Dr. Vieira?
Well, I wouldn't say, I wouldn't put it in exactly those terms.
Right.
Because I think the collective right versus individual right debate really muddies the waters.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the first 13 words of the Second Amendment, and let's remember that there's nothing in the Constitution that's an irrelevance. There's nothing there that is surplusage, as it were, that it wasn't put in for a particular purpose. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of the free state. And what that tells you is the ultimate goal, actually, of the entire constitutional system, a free state.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously a free state can't exist without some significant measure of security. And then the thing that the Constitution describes as necessary to this security and ultimately necessary for this purpose of this free state is a well-regulated militia. Now, that's the only place in which the Constitution describes anything as necessary for any purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't say Congress is necessary. It doesn't say the President is necessary. It doesn't say the Supreme Court is necessary. Obviously, the Constitution could have been written in a different manner with different forms of government structures. It doesn't even say the states are necessary. The states are essentially contingent entities that derive from the colonies, which were more or less grants given by the King and Queen of England. There's nothing necessary there in a political, philosophical sense. But a well-regulated militia is necessary. And then if you go to the rest of the Second Amendment, it tells you the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, the right of the people to keep and bear arms is, of course, the essence of a well-regulated militia. That's almost the definition of a well-regulated militia, the people in arms. And, of course, it shall not be infringed, because otherwise you couldn't possibly have a free state.
Right.
So what we're talking about here is a right that is looking to a collective or political purpose, a free state. It obviously has to be exercised by individuals. There is no collective exercise of this right.
Right. And I didn't mean to imply that it wasn't. That's right. I didn't mean to imply that it wasn't an individual right. Certainly it is, just like all the Bill of Rights. It was really more of what you're talking about is really how, for it to be practically and effective, is that it needs to be organized. Is that correct?
Well, that's exactly right. If you look at the various reasons that are given by most of the proponents of Americans' right to keep bear arms, and you mentioned some of them, target shooting, hunting, self-defense. Well, all of those would be elements of activities that people would engage in for preparing themselves for the militia or through the militia. Obviously, target shooting and hunting prepares you for the use of arms. And self-defense is not only an individual concept, but it's a collective or community concept. All right?
Mm-hmm.
But the essence of the problem here is not having that gun in your cellar, having your M16, if you could get one, I guess AR-15, and 1,000 rounds of ammunition in your cellar as an individual. That is not going to enable you to stand up to an organized tyranny.
That's right.
That's obvious, right?
That's right. It's like
organization with other members of the community in some sort of structure that has prepared you through training and a certain amount of discipline and so forth and so on to deal with that kind of a problem.
Exactly. It's what Franklin said when he said we'll either hang together or we'll hang separately. If we are all just a bunch of disjointed individuals, it's not going to be possible for us to exercise our individual right against an organized tyranny.
If your individual right under the Second Amendment really flows into an individual duty to provide yourself as one member of the militia. If you look back historically, and this is the only way you can discover what the words well-regulated militia, or if you go to the original Constitution, the militia of the several states. So it's actually, the concept is actually an original Constitution. The Second Amendment is essentially a re-emphasis of that. But the Constitution doesn't define those terms. For the obvious reason, the Constitution is not a dictionary.
Right.
Most of the terms in the Constitution are not defined, because it defines Congress, the House, and the Senate. Those were new bodies that were created. And it defines, for instance, the word treason, because the framers wanted to cut down the old English definition of treason and make it very, very specific. But it doesn't define any of these terms related to the militia. And the reason was because every person in the United States, at least who was an adult, knew perfectly well what a well-regulated militia was. Every adult free American, because of course there were slaves at that time, but every adult free American either was participating in a militia at that point in time, or he had been participating in a militia for a great number of years during his lifetime. And this had gone back into the early 1600s. And if one digs out, as I have done, and put a couple of examples, two colonies, actually, Rhode Island and Virginia, in the Sword and Sovereignty, if one goes back to these colonial records, one will discover dozens and dozens of militia acts, militia statutes that were passed in the various colonies and in the independent states after 1776. And they're all essentially the same in terms of the structure, the duties, the powers, so forth and so on, of these militias. And in fact, if you lay them down on a table and you kind of excise the title so you couldn't see from which state they came, which colony they came, you'd be rather hard-pressed to tell from which one a particular statute came. And if you look at that structure, you can come up with a definition of a well-regulated militia, and the essence of a well-regulated militia was that the people were going to be armed. In fact, every adult, able-bodied, free man within the colonies or states had an obligation to be armed. Not simply a right. Of course, the right flowed from the obligation, right? You couldn't be obliged to do something if you didn't have a right to do it. But you were obliged to have a gun, usually your own gun. You had to go out into the free market to purchase. And you were required to keep this where? Not in some arsenal or magazine controlled by public officials, but in your own home.
Very much like what we see in modern-day Switzerland, isn't it?
Well, the Swiss militia structure goes actually way back into the Middle Ages. Right? The English had a militia structure based on what they call the yeomanry, and that basic idea came to America. The beauty of what happened in America was you didn't have the hierarchical social structure of lords and commons. And as a result, from the very beginning, everyone had to be organized in the militia. You didn't have distinctions based on these essentially fictional social classes. So the militia became, from the start, a highly democratic institution in the sense that everyone participated in it. Unless you were a conscientious objector, and then, of course, that you weren't required to have a firearm, but you could be required to do something else.
I remember we went to England, we went to Warwick Castle, and they had a demonstration there. And the fellow who was doing the archery, who talked about the yeomanry there, and he talked about how they were required to practice. They were required to be experts at the longbow. And he said they practiced so much that you could even see the differences in their arms. On the one arm that took most of the pressure was, you can go back and look at the skeletons and you can see a difference in that arm because these guys practiced so much with their longbow because that was part of their requirement as a yeomanry.
Right, that was the bowman. And otherwise people were required to keep arms of various kinds in their homes so they could have drawn them immediately. So that concept goes back a long way. Now, what we've lost here in this country is the structure. If you look at the breakdown of the system, it really occurred at the end of the 1800s and early 1900s, and eventually begins to be codified in what was called the Dick Act in 1903, out of which, in a series of other acts, 1914, 1916, 1933, comes eventually the National Guard. And a lot of people look at the National Guard and they say, well, the National Guard is the continuation of the militia. And that's simply not true. If you look at all the elements of the National Guard, it's a voluntary organization. The militia were not voluntary organization. Militia is a draft organization. The National Guard people do not acquire their own arms and keep them at home. They're arms supplied to them by the state government or the federal government. They keep them in some arsenal.
And that's a key point, too. Hang on. We're going to continue this discussion right after the break. We're talking to Dr. Edwin Vieira about the true nature of the militia, the true constitutional nature of the militia. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Dr. Edwin Vieira about the militia and how he's helping us to understand the importance of the militia and to understand a correct definition of it. Before we get back to Dr. Vieira, we've had a couple of emails come in about this E-4B that has been flying around Austin. One person writes from New Orleans. This is from Amanda. She said, this happened here also in Gretna, about 5 minutes from downtown New Orleans, about 5 months ago. A large, and she emphasizes large, white plane with no windows, that's also the way this is, flying really low in a circle about 4 times. If it was any closer to the Superdome, it would have hit it. I couldn't get a picture due to this no space on my phone. I looked all over the web to find out if anyone was reporting this. Didn't see anything. She says, I understand your fear, Alex, because I was scared also. We also have a report from Las Vegas. This is from Mark. He says, last October, I had a similar experience to Alex's with a plane downtown in Las Vegas. I'm a cab driver in Las Vegas. I've seen countless thousands of planes come in and out of the airport or overshoot when the runway is too crowded. The plane I saw flew over the airport, but not in a standard flight lane. It flew over the airport, but west of the standard flight lanes over a private air terminal at a very low altitude. Very low, he emphasizes. This one, however, sprayed the ground, with which were presumably chemtrail agents. I don't know the model of the plane. It happened so fast and unexpectedly, but it was a huge white plane. So we'll see if there's any other reports about what's going on here in Austin, but we do have video of that, and Paul Joseph Watson is putting out an article about that right now, comparing pictures of what we took to actual photographs of E4B, as well as some CNN reports about that. But we were talking to Dr. Edwin Vieira about the constitutional militia and distinctions about that. And as we were finishing up in the, as we went to commercial break, Dr. Vieira, you were talking about the difference between the National Guard and the militia. And one of the things that you made a distinction about was the fact that a militia keeps its arms at home, and the tradition of the English yeomanry, also as we see happening in Switzerland, and that doesn't happen with the National Guard.
No, and of course the National Guard can be called out for functions other than the 3 limited functions that the Constitution assigns to the militia. And when including being sent overseas, of course, to foreign wars or other kinds of military adventures. And when the National Guard is so-called federalized, it comes under the control of the president and can be brought under the control of the regular armed forces, which, of course, is an impossibility for the militia because the militia and the regular armed forces are entirely separate, independent entities under the Constitution.
And that's something that, excuse me, that's something people can help to, it's been out of our, we've lost that tradition, we've lost that understanding here in America for so long, but you can go back and you can look at something like Last of the Mohicans, for example. Even if you don't want to go back to the original history documents, you can see in the recorded history of the Revolutionary War, as well as in novels that were written about that time, you know, just prior to the Revolutionary War, like Last of the Mohicans, you see this tension between the regular army and the militia. The militia acted somewhat independent. They would cooperate with the regular army, but it was still a very separate, independent entity.
Well, they're separate entities. There are actually 50 of them. There's one in each state. They call the militia of the several states in the Constitution. Right. And so that distinction still exists in the Constitution. This isn't simply a matter of history or tradition, something lost in the midst of time. This is a constitutional mandate. The difficulty is that Congress essentially flubbed the whole process, giving them the benefit of the doubt on this, that what they were doing had some good intentions behind it. They created the National Guard to create a huge reserve force for the regular armed forces, and then they left everyone else in what they call the unorganized militia. So if you look at the militia statute of Congress today, Title 10 of the United States Code, Section 331, it breaks what it calls the militia of the United States. And we could stop there. There's no such thing as the militia of the United States. Read the Constitution. Apparently they don't want it. But it calls this militia of the United States being composed of 2 parts. The organized militia, which is the National Guard, and then the unorganized militia, which is everyone else. And if you go to various state statutes, Virginia is an example of this, they break it down the same way. There's the organized militia, which is National Guard and so-called naval militia, and the Virginia Defense Force, which is a subsidiary of the National Guard authorized by Congress. And then there's everyone else who falls into the unorganized militia. Well, by constitutional hypothesis, there can be no such thing as an unorganized militia. If you look at the history of the colonies, the independent states, and the statute that Congress passed in 1792, the first Militia Act, they organized everyone. Literally everyone, unless you were a slave, because, of course, they had slavery in those days, and slaves couldn't be allowed to have firearms.
Hang on right there, Dr. Vieira. We're going to be coming right back, and we're going to talk about why this isn't just an academic argument. We're going to talk about the real-world implications of the militia and whether or not we have one. So stay tuned. We've got a long segment coming up with Dr. Edwin Vieira. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. We're talking to Dr. Edwin Vieira about the real constitutional militia and about his book, The Sword and Sovereignty, that's available on Amazon.com. As one person put it, it's a magnum opus about the constitutional militia. Before we get back to Dr. Vieira, though, I just want to mention there is some breaking news about a coup apparently taking place right now in Egypt. The Egyptian Islamicist leader Morsi, who was supported by Obama, it appears that the majority of people there are not happy with it. There's massive demonstrations in the streets, as you see right there. Lots of signs that we talked about at the beginning of the program. People very upset with him, very upset with Obama putting him in power. And they are now, it looks as though there is a military coup that is underway. That's being reported by the Christian Science Monitor, as well as the, let's see, this is a newspaper out of New Zealand. So we've got several different newspapers that are reporting this. We have the Egyptian President Mohammed Morsi's national security advisor said that a military coup was underway today. So there it is, from the president himself saying that he's getting kicked out by the military. So we want to know how we keep essentially a slow coup from happening in this country, because we're not talking about just the academic issues of correct understanding of the Constitution. You know, we talked about some of the history of that with Dr. Vieira, but Dr. Vieira, talk to us about what's really at stake here if we don't have a constitutional militia, if instead we have an unconstitutional standing army.
Well, the question in my mind, talking to any American patriot, is do you take the Constitution and Declaration of Independence seriously or don't you? These are not hortatory documents. They were written to provide a legal framework for running the government of a free society. And they are very much like the engine, I would say, of a Mercedes-Benz. They're relatively complicated, finely tuned instruments. And if you pull out the piston or you pull out a valve of a Mercedes-Benz, or especially if you pull out the crankshaft, which is absolutely necessary to transmit the power to the drivetrain, the system fails. All right? Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at the Constitution of the United States, what does it tell you? What does it declare to you is necessary to maintain a free state? This could not be more obvious. 13 words. You don't have to read my book. You don't have to go on the internet and read all sorts of blogs. 13 words in the Constitution. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of the free state, period. You could stop right there.
That's right.
Do we have such a well-regulated militia in any state in this country? No.
No.
And that is the result of what I would consider at least to be stupidity, if not treachery, on the part of the people in Washington, D.C. and a lot of state capitals, although those people in the state capitals pretty much went along with what Congress simply laid out for them. And as a result of that, as a result of not having a well-regulated militia, which could perform all sorts of functions, conducting honest elections, providing alternative currency, supervising public officials, I could go down a list, and in fact I do go down a list in The Sword and Sovereignty and flesh this all out. As a result of not having these institutions in the 50 states, we now see the development of a national paramilitary police state that makes something like the Stasi look like a kindergarten.
That's right. And we see continual foreign wars, too. That's another
problem as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Perpetual war for perpetual peace, as the old phrase had it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we see that, and
it's no coincidence.
Back to the point that, as the Constitution says, what is necessary for the security of a free state is a well-regulated militia. The militia are composed of the people. The people are the ones who ordained and established the Constitution. The people, the so-called good people, as the Declaration of Independence describes them, were the ones who gave the authority for the independence of the original 13 colonies, and thus today of the United States as a whole. This is the embodiment of the people's power, the militia.
That's right.
As Mao Zedong would say, political power grows out of the barrel of a gun, and the Constitution tells us exactly the same thing. But it's not political power in the raw sense. It's political power in the sense of directed towards a free society.
That's right.
So you take that principle, whoever controls the gun controls political power. The Constitution tells you political power should be in the hands of the people, and therefore the people should control the guns through the militia. Do we have the militia? No, ergo, we don't have the people in control, and therefore we don't have a free state. It's really very simple. So if you're an American patriot, and you're sitting back about asking the question the Ford Motor Company used to ask, what is job one? Job one is the revitalization of these institutions that the Constitution tells us are necessary.
So how do you suggest we do that? Because you make a distinction between the private militia and the constitutionally regulated militia.
Well, of course, there's no such thing as a private militia constitutionally, all right? The militia were all governmental entities. Why? Because we're talking about popular sovereignty and popular self-government, ultimately. These aren't institutions that are outside of government. These are institutions that are within the government and control the government. And this has to be done state by state because you can forget Congress. That's a wasteland, all right? And I wrote an earlier book, also on Amazon called Constitutional Homeland Security, which goes into this practical political question of exactly how do you need to organize people at the local level, grassroots level, in order to bring influence, shall we call it, on state legislatures to pass the appropriate kind of statute. And I think this could be done in some states, certainly, maybe not Massachusetts or Connecticut or New York, California, whatever, the wasteland. But in some states in this country, that it could be done. And my view would be, or my suspicion would be, that once that happened in one or two states, it would catch on very, very quickly because people would now realize, hey, there is something we can actually do here. There is a way we can regain control, at least of our state governments. And I'm looking at a situation, I tell people all the time, how many people recognize the fragility of the banking and monetary system of this country and are predicting a catastrophic collapse? And not just of this country, but perhaps banks throughout the entire world. When that happens, what kind of social dislocations, economic problems, civil unrest, and civil disobedience will occur? Well, you can imagine that, right?
That's right.
It comes out of one of these disaster movies.
It's going to be massive.
Out of Hollywood.
That's right.
And we do not have prepared in this country at the local and state level anything that is capable of dealing with that problem, let alone fending it off to begin with. We're going to depend upon institutions like FEMA, which demonstrated their incompetence in Katrina, in Hurricane Sandy, again and again and again. That's what Congress has given us, this top-down pyramidal structure, the all-seeing eye at the apex, right, which is utterly incompetent to deal with the kinds of problems we're facing.
Well, we got FEMA. We just had the story break yesterday on Infowars.com. Paul Joseph Watson found a document where they were celebrating the fact that they were going to be using Russians to provide protection security at mass events in the United States. So that's the kind of mindset of FEMA. We certainly don't want to rely on FEMA for protection when things collapse economically. And we have seen in some states, like in Utah and others, there's been some effort to try to do something to about gold, you know, because they're concerned about a financial collapse. But we haven't seen anything done in any of the states that I'm aware of in terms of moving towards a constitutional state militia.
No, they're terrified of the M word, the Southern Poverty Law Center.
That's right. They've demonized that.
Frightened them about this.
And we're not talking about, you know, a private militia, because as you mentioned in your discussions, you know, with the private militia, you've got Joe Bob and his friends over here, and you've got Billy Bob and his friends over there. Who's really in control here? There's not really any clear lines of authority. That's why it needs to be under a state government.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And the point I make to many people is the breakdown of the monetary and banking system could occur tomorrow morning. I mean, there's essentially no way that we can predict exactly when that will happen. And once that happens, things will get out of control very quickly. So step one should be the revitalization of the militia and the sword and sovereignty. I gave a very detailed description of how once that is done, the militia could be used to start introducing alternative sound currencies into various states in anticipation of this breakdown of the fiat money system.
That's right.
Right. So one thing follows from the other, but first you have to have the insurance policy of the militia in place. You have to have people organized, understanding what their legal authority is, understanding what their responsibility is politically in terms of self-government. And that can be done. And we don't need to mobilize the full population of this country. I would think that if you started off with 5 or 10% of the adult male population, you'd have more than enough to perform all of the functions, at least initially, that would be required of a modern militia. So it's not as if one would have to derange the entire social structure to resurrect these institutions. It could be done on initially, because I think 5% of the population would probably be willing to come out, sufficiently patriotic to be willing to come out and perform these functions initially. And then once that happens, other people, through peer pressure alone, will look at the necessity, practically speaking, of social standing and so forth, to participate. And then the thing has a life of its own, and it will spread and develop to something I would think that looks a lot like modern Switzerland.
Right, right. And along the lines of Switzerland, think about the fact, we mentioned that one of the failings that happens to a state, one of the ways that a state fails, is with constant foreign wars. Switzerland has always had a citizen militia there, and as a result, Switzerland is famous for not being involved in foreign wars. They're famous for their neutrality, because if you have a militia, you don't get involved in foreign wars.
Particularly given that in World War I and World War II, they were right in the center of the conflict.
That's right. They wrote it out, and nobody attacked them. Hitler was not about to attack Switzerland. They were too well defended, too well fortified, so they would go all around them, but not into Switzerland.
That's exactly right. Now, obviously, the United States is not quite in the same position as Switzerland, but removing our involvement in one of these foreign adventures after another would be step one in returning us to a proper republic in this country, as opposed to something that mimics the imperial Rome.
That's right. That's right.
So all of these things play out together, and especially we don't want a situation to occur where there is an economic or some other kind of catastrophic situation, crisis that develops, and because of the inability of the clowns in FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security, the armed forces have to step in with some kind of martial law declaration because they're the only ones capable of restoring order. We don't want that for a number of reasons. First, I think because the Constitution precludes that. Obviously, we can't have the armed forces setting themselves up above the Constitution. The armed forces are really incompetent to perform most of these domestic functions. But number three, historically, one learns that once the armed forces step in a situation of that kind, they never really step out again.
That's right. That's right. That's the entry point.
That's right. And so you always have the possibility, even though they may be behind the scenes and it's some kind of civilian government that they put up front, that there's going to be another putsch or there's going to be another coup or another golpe, as they say in the banana republics of South America, because they always recognize, well, we had to do this once, we may have to do it again. And then, of course, there are always people that will arise in any armed forces who have personal agendas.
Yeah,
to advance themselves.
Liberties lost are never easily regained, and we have
right.
people chomping at the bit to establish a police state. I mean, just look at the reaction to the Boston bombing, for example. The entire city on lockdown to try to find one 19-year-old, dragging people out of their homes at gunpoint. It's absolutely insane reactions to that. And we see this whenever there's a natural disaster. We see the difference in the way FEMA reacts. And my son did a video on this, won a contest, and looking at the difference between disaster that was localized. We had a tornado come in and wipe out a small town, but it was not widespread enough that the federal government and FEMA did not get involved. And so what you had there was you had a cooperation between private sources who were bringing in food, dropping them at churches, they were distributing it. You had the police there keeping people away from down power lines, and everything recovered very well. Versus when you had a major hurricane that hit a large area, FEMA got involved. And all of a sudden, nobody could get food. They couldn't get relief because FEMA became this giant bottleneck. And they're going around shoving people around, you know, just raw display of power.
That's exactly right. And, of course, if a militia structure was set up in any particular state, there would be no, how shall I put it, existential need for FEMA. Right? People say, we don't need you. We're capable of doing all of this.
Exactly.
Above and beyond anything that you could supply. The thing that worries me, though, you talk about what happened in Boston Watertown with a deployment of 9,000 myrmidons out there, 9,000 of these Gestapo types. You didn't see any of those people whose homes were invaded simply saying no.
Right.
I'm not talking about physically resisting, right? But simply saying no. When one of these armed thugs comes to us and says, well, we're going to come in and look at it. No, you're not. You have a warrant?
Right.
No, you're not. End of discussion. Now, they still may have been arrested and dragged out of their homes, as many of them were, with their hands up in the air as if they were prisoners of war.
Right.
But it was just interesting to me that in the cradle of liberty, Boston, Massachusetts, people have gone so far down the road of accepting Gestapo-like tyranny that they simply say nothing.
That's right. You know, we had Charlotte Iserby yesterday that we interviewed on the Nightly News. She was talking about the issue of education, and she had a quote from C.S. Lewis, and he said, when education loses out to training, it's the end of civilization. What we have happening with the media, with the government, is really training. You know, you're trying to educate people about what's really in the Constitution. We're trying to educate them about what's going on and what's in the Constitution. But the mainstream media, as well as the government, is involved in a training exercise, just like we see this giant plane flying between the skyscrapers here in Austin. It's all part of training.
And it's training at a very low level. It's dog training.
Yes,
right?
yes.
It's stimulus response.
Yeah, like the TSA.
Pavlovian technique that when you get a certain signal from your master, you respond in a certain way without thinking about it.
Absolutely. Look at the TSA. It's a perfect example of Skinnerian positive operant conditioning, you know, where they come in and it's like, you let me put my hands on you and you can fly. You know, that's your reward, your immediate reward. It's kind of what you would do if you were a horse whisperer or a dog whisperer. I guess these are travel whisperers, right? They're training as like some brute animals, and that's basically what B.F. Skinner was talking about doing.
That's right. And the non-animal says, as I do, I don't fly.
Right. Right.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the airlines can go bankrupt.
Yes.
And maybe they should.
Yes.
Because they're playing along with this in the same way that many of these internet service providers and Skype and so on we discover are playing along with the NSA in turning over electronic communications. And that's just what amazes me, that the attitude of people, that they are willing to accept all of this basically nonsensical police state activity, because they've never proven that any of this police state activity really has a beneficial effect.
Oh, they've proven that they've proven that it is ineffective as far as safety goes. You know, they've had the Florida congressman who was instrumental in putting it in actually saw the results, wanted to make it public, but they wouldn't let him because it was too damning. We'll be right back with one final segment here with Dr. Edwin Vieira, so stay tuned. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight here on this Wednesday, July 3rd, 2013. And we're going to be going right back to Dr. Edwin Vieira, but we have a clip here from CNN talking about the plane that we saw earlier today, a Boeing E-4B, the Doomsday plane. Here's that clip. Okay, this is a clip of
9/11. A mysterious plane was seen flying right over the president's residence. Even some CNN staffers saw it. To this day, it has never been officially explained.
Say the details are classified. This comparison of the CNN video and an official Air Force photo suggests the mystery plane is among the military's most sensitive aircraft, an Air Force E-4B.
The average military person isn't involved. Even the average FBI person isn't involved. They'll just be told, oh, it was some drill. And it gets you used to just having a giant secret shadow government aircraft almost run into buildings.
There you go. That's a picture of an E-4B, and that's what we had right here in Austin. You can see the pictures that our crew took of that. And it really comes back down to what we were just talking about in the last segment, and that is training. Training versus education. And we've got a perfect example of that today. We've got the U.S. government trying to train us to be afraid of everything, to run to them for their promised safety. But we also are trying to educate people with Dr. Edwin Vieira talking about what a constitutional militia is, trying to educate people about our real protection against tyranny. Dr. Vieira, thank you for joining us, and we've got one last segment here. I'd like for you to kind of summarize for people why this is important and what, if anything, they can do to try to make this happen. Of course, it has to happen at the state legislative area, but talk about that. Just one last segment, whatever you want to do to wrap this up here.
Well, it's important because if people want to live in the free state for which the Constitution and Declaration of Independence were written, they have to follow essentially the instructions that are given in the manual. Well-regulated militia be necessary to security of free state. And we see the results of not following those instructions with the development of this national paramilitary police state, which no one can deny is there and is growing every day in its intrusiveness and power.
Very rapidly, yes.
Right, very rapidly. So if you want to stop that, or at least put a brake on it to a certain extent, then we have to follow the Constitution's own instructions, revitalize the militia. The militia of the several states are state institutions constitutionally. That has to be done state by state. It has to be done by the people themselves, starting at the grassroots, because they can't expect the state legislatures won't necessarily pick up on their own. And as I said earlier, I've written a book called Constitutional Homeland Security. It's on Amazon. That describes the practical approach to this problem, or at least the suggestion that I have. And then the larger book, The Sword and Sovereignty, which goes into excruciating detail. And I think it essentially is undeniable, the results, because it derives from history that no one can question. And it's all there, footnoted with endnotes and so forth and so on, for those people who really want to get into that in detail.
And it's very important because, as you mentioned before, the federal government is really a lost cause. Everybody wants to focus on changing the president, from this Republican to this Democrat or vice versa, or changing the Congress. It is so hopelessly corrupted. The only chance that we have, and it is still an uphill chance, is at the state levels. We've had a situation right here in Texas where a couple of years ago we had a bill introduced to stop the TSA conditioning us to be slaves so that they put their hands on us and molesting people. And they were basically intimidated by the federal government into backing down, saying that they were not going to let planes fly. And the same federal government that's flying planes between buildings today here in Austin. So there's a lot to be done there. People need to get involved. As Alex says all the time, you are the resistance. And we're going to have some overdrive coming up here with Alex. We're going to be talking about this plane issue here. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Vieira. And that book is The Sword and the Sovereignty on Amazon.com. Stay tuned. We're going to have overdrive with Alex. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. We're in overdrive. Now, Alex was taking the day off today to spend some time with his family, but now I'm in the studio and Alex is the man on the street, because as he's out there, we've got a Boeing E-4B that's been flying circles around Austin, as well as flying through the buildings downtown. It's a giant, much larger than a commercial airplane, a giant military-type plane that is flying around, and really it's kind of a PSYOP operation, isn't it, Alex?
Well, it is, and it's just showing that Homeland Security can do whatever it wants. 2 years in New York was a huge freak out as it flew.
Oh, we're cutting out a little bit there.
And 70 and...
There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
can you hear me now?
We missed just that last bit. You were talking about how they did it 2 years ago in New York.
That's right, and it was a PSYOP, and let me do this. I'm going to pull over. I've actually been downtown now talking to people who saw it, and they said it really frightened them. And we've had a lot of Austin listeners calling the studio and sending emails to showtips@infowars.com of videos and photos they got. Because here's how the PSYOP's going to work. We're 7-8 miles from downtown Austin in an industrial district, where we get the cheapest rent in Austin, in southeast Austin. We're in an industrial area, and it was flying, 1,000, 1,500 feet right above the office. So people are going to say, seeing our video, oh, because I know how the PSYOPs work and how the mind's already prepared to whitewash things under a culture of conditioning. Where is that around buildings? That's the high-def footage we got at our studios in southeast Austin, okay? I saw it flying beside buildings, above buildings, and between buildings, to where I saw it. It was so bizarre. It's like that double take where you're like, what? A giant airplane's over me? And then you watch it fly between buildings. It was so bizarre. But I've talked to Austinites, and they said, yeah, I saw that, or everybody's talking about it. So I'm downtown right now, and we need to look up for Paul Watson's article, the height of the Austonian, because it's the highest building in Austin. It was flying beside that. It was flying right at about that level, maybe a few hundred feet above it, from what I saw with my eyes. Again, when it came back on another pass, then it came back and passed around higher, and then it went off and flew at about 5,000 feet around other parts of Austin. But again, just if the Doomsday plane was flying in circles around Austin at 30,000 feet, it'd be national news. When these things are seen, it's national news.
Yeah.
So this is huge.
And even doing it...
And I don't want people to just whitewash that.
Even doing it down here where we are in southeast Austin, I mean, we're not that far away from the airport. So it is, you can't tell that from looking at the videos, but that's still a big deal because that's still pretty reckless behavior that close to an airport.
No, I totally agree. It was flying in circles all over Austin, and it looked like quadrants. First south, then central, then northeast, then central, north, north central, then
Yeah, we've got...
and again, I'm double taking this whole time.
Yeah, one person says here is, came in a show tips, asked the question, is the plane a psyop to distract from the Egyptian coup that's going on? Another one says, we've had a couple of people send in stuff. We had someone from New Orleans, someone from Las Vegas. Here's another one saying that on September 8th, 2012 in Wallington, New Jersey, northeastern New Jersey experienced the same thing that we just had here. He said he didn't get any photographs of it, but it did freak people out and made the family talk about 9/11, even though I was helping my brother move that Saturday. So that's exactly what they want people to think about.
Well, listen, again, I keep saying this. It's one of the wildest things I've ever seen, to be in the middle of big buildings. I mean, right by, in the middle of downtown. That's where we came to stay for a few days, so we could, go see museums and stuff with the kids and go fishing in a river nearby just for fun. And you look up, and there's an airplane with wings bigger, than the biggest building is. And, I mean, I thought it was 9/11. The first thing hit my mind was, because that's what's been imprinted on your brain, is, oh
Stay
my
tuned.
gosh,
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hang on, Alex. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. It is Wednesday, July 3rd, 2013, and we have something of a role reversal here today. I'm sitting in Alex's chair, and he's out on the street doing reports. Alex had the day off to spend some time with his family, and while he was out, he was a witness to a Boeing E-4B flying at a very low altitude through downtown Austin. And he's been filing reports, talking to people on the street about what they saw. We had him just a few minutes ago. We were trying to reestablish a connection with him, and we should have him back shortly. Just think about what this is, though. Think about how the communist governments like to, on May Day, parade their military and all their latest hardware up and down the streets to intimidate their population, to intimidate other nations. And here we have this giant Boeing E-4B behaving in a way that would get any other pilot arrested, and he would never fly again, flying at extremely low level through downtown Austin. These pictures that we've got up here, if you're looking at our video feed, these are pictures that were taken of it flying at a very low altitude over our office, which is not too far from the airport. And that's reckless behavior there as well. You don't see it flying through the buildings. That was where Alex was. It flew in circles here for quite some time, then moved north through Austin, and then moved into the northeast area of Austin, and then to the northwest area of Austin. And Alex also saw other aircraft, a strange-looking helicopter, as well as some other military drills going on. We know that the number of military drills that the government is doing and drills that they're doing with the police are increasing in frequency and in scope. We also know that the military trains for the kinds of scenarios that they see themselves getting involved in. Here we've got a video feed just this last weekend in Charlotte, North Carolina. A fellow was walking along and was surprised to look up in the sky and see a lot of helicopters landing and troops getting out of it. And he began taking film of it, and of course after the troops get out, take defensive positions and their training and everything, the commander came over, or some military officer came over and told him he had to leave, that it wasn't safe in that area. Well, that's right. It isn't safe when they do things like this. They shouldn't be doing things like that in areas where it's going to present a danger to the public, unannounced and in secret. But he had every right to be there. It was a public place. And he was exercising his right to film this. And you can see, if you're looking at the video feed, they've got a couple of copters on the ground and a couple more in the air. And there's the military officer telling him, you got to get going. See, if you're in uniform in America, you can order anybody around that you want. The rest of us who are not in uniforms of any type, we're just slaves. And we're supposed to obey any order that they give us, no matter how unlawful it is. And so he calls over someone in a blue uniform, and this guy says, you've got to shut it down. This is the video feed that we see right here. And he goes, I'm in a public area. And he goes, he says, you got to shut down because you're in a public area. And he goes, exactly, I'm in a public area. I'm not trespassing. And he said, no, you're trespassing. And he basically then gets rough with him and handcuffs him, arrests him, takes his phone out of his pocket, throws it on the ground, tries to break it. It didn't break, so we have a record of what happened. That's the kind of intimidation that we're seeing from a police state. It's kind of hard to tell the difference anymore between the police and the military. The police are acting like the military. They're arming themselves like the military. And we've got the police, the military, thinking that they can boss us around. Of course, the police don't have a right to boss us around either, but they assume that. They're presuming that, I should say. And we need to get together. Something to think about on this 4th of July. What are you going to do to resist this burgeoning tyranny? What are you going to do to get the police under control? And we got Alex back on the phone line. Tell us what you're seeing there now, Alex.
Absolutely. Again, the magic of audio Skype, but occasionally it isn't working too well. Can you hear me now, David?
Yeah, coming through clear.
Yeah, no, it's funny what you're saying right now. I have this epiphany all the time, but it gets more and more intense every day. Just how right we've been, just how accurate we've been. And I'm not patting myself on the back. We are just recognizing what is in our face, completely open. And I want to say something about what Edwin Vieira said earlier. He's a great constitutional lawyer, one of the foremost in the nation. I still think he's buying into some of their propaganda, and I've chastised some of my reporters for this, and then I've sat there and proven it to them. And I don't know everything, but I have immersed myself in this for 20 years, probably like nobody else, and I've learned the tricks of the enemy, and I learn more every year now than I learned the previous decade. It's amazing. But this is a simple trick. They put out these fake polls saying Americans support being spied on. Americans support the TSA. Americans support drones. And if you go look at the groups that put those polls out and you go actually read how the questions were asked or the demographics, they have phone trees and known respondents that they know what answer will give them. You go look, though, at other more scientific polls, it shows the polar opposite. Congress has a 10% approval rating in Gallup polls that ask the questions responsively. And in a way that is meant to actually get what the people are saying. These push polls are spins. And what they're meant to do is convince people that you're all alone and to demoralize you so that you basically accept everything that's going on, everything that's happening. So, I hear my own reporters who are really smart. I hear Edwin Vieira, who's probably smarter than I am in most ways, saying, oh, it's terrible, people are accepting this. As if they make it, like we think we're getting safer because of this. But that's not actually what's happening. But there is a psyop there. People then see those polls and feel like they're alone and then feel like they can do nothing. They're not accepting it. They just feel broke back. They feel broken. They feel like they can be walked all over. This is a military program by the globalists against all of us. When I say our military, I don't mean our military. It's important for the PSYOP to not be effective against us to understand we're all under this global, scientific, technocratic, high-tech system that the wealth of the West was able to develop. And the elite is on such a power trip to have all these advanced technologies of flicker rates on TV and semantical manipulation and trauma-based mind control and the acclimation programs and the subliminals and the neuro-linguistic programming and all the layers that they stack onto this. But the issue is it's all blown back on them as well. When you look at how they're behaving and how the establishment is operating, they're now some of the most low-functioning people out there because they're humans too. There's no way they're going to set up this high-tech technocracy and get away with this. And so I think it's absolutely important for everybody to understand that this is not our opinion. And if anything, where I have failed the listeners, and I want to apologize for this, is not stating the full magnitude and breaking it down logistically from A to Z. Instead, I tend to cover certain quadrants of things. But again, no one's perfect. But the real reason I wanted to call in here and go into overdrive is that what you were just saying, they're organizing militarily against us. They're saying the patriots and liberty lovers are the new terrorists, which we knew was going on behind the scenes, now public. They are engaging in open military domination domestically to prepare us so that if they engage in real warfare against us, we're acclimated like dodo birds and just sit there while the sailors beat our brains out, as the sailors would land and the dodo birds have been acclimated not to be as scared. They had become, well, really the opposite of domesticated. You can domesticate something where it's not scared. That's what's happening to us. With the dodo birds, they've never been had predators after them, so it was basically a hyper.
That's right. You're talking about training versus education. That's what we were talking about. Yeah. We got you back. Go ahead. I think we've got you.
No, it's just that, absolutely, jump in any time, David. There's just some latency via this audio Skype, but I'm coming through clear, correct?
Yes, we've got you now.
Okay, good. Yeah, there's a 2-second latency. So the issue here is that this is not our opinion, and people out there have to make a decision about all this evil, about the corruption, because it's not just them having the doomsday plane buzz Austin to condition the public that they can do whatever they want, that they're above the law. They are engineering the GMO to sterilize you and your family. It grows poisonous pesticides in all the major...
I think we lost a little bit of contact there, didn't we, guys, with him? I think it dropped out for a moment here. As Alex is saying, this isn't just a psyop. There are actually real things that the government is doing. And that's why we said you need to be the resistance. That's why we were taking calls before this happened. We wanted to know exactly what you're doing to fight this. We need to organize. We need to hang together. We need to establish things like constitutional state militias. We need to get out and protest the fact that our Fourth Amendment is being declared null and void, essentially. And along those lines, remember that there is a Restore the Fourth protest. It's going on in over 100 cities across America. You can find out about that at restorethefourth.net. You'll find detailed list of all the different protest organizations, locations rather, that they're going to have it. I just got this in from Chris. It's an NSA protest. Good. And this is sent to us by Joel Skousen. He says that there's going to be a protest rally at the entrance to the new Utah data center, 9 a.m., 4th of July. That's very important because that is where they are taking all of our information to be stored indefinitely so they can mine that in the future. So to repeat that, there is going to be a protest rally tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., 4th of July, at the new Utah Data Center. Very important to get there. That's in Bluffdale, Utah. The National Security Agency's colossal Bluffdale, Utah Data Center is about to become operational because the dismissive attitude of the U.S. federal government with respect to our formally guaranteed right of privacy, as well as the inestimable power of the emergent quantum computer technology, which will be employed at that site. The last vestiges of a way of life bequeathed to us by our founding fathers, paid for by 8 years of struggle against the British Empire and every other war we've been in, is about to come to an end if we don't stand up and do something about it. This is the time to do something about it. You know, a crisis is a danger and an opportunity. We have an opportunity now to do something, but we also are in great danger if we don't do anything. And we've got Alex back on the line. Alex.
Absolutely, very eloquent. You know, I was saying people should resist and speak out any way they can. I can't think of a better way than whoever's listening. And again, I want to say this about the Infowars crew. We're in the trenches 24/7. You can hear me on air every time I'm on a short vacation, calling in, you know, with desperate, you know, orders and just, you know, desperately trying to coordinate my overworked, really smart and intelligent, you know, crew and trying to keep everybody focused and realizing how important this work is. I mean, it's very sad that Infowars.com is the best there is, because we're not arrogant. We are the biggest and best thing there is in this fight. And look how ragtag we are. And because we're aware of this info, and we understand it's diabolical. And we understand that they're now just hiding tyranny and its expansion in plain view. And that 5 years ago when they built the NSA command base in San Antonio, that's gargantuan, if local newspapers, San Antonio Express News and others would go there, they would actually arrest falsely on public property, you know, just on the sidewalk, reporters. Our reporters went down there, and I told them, hand them a news article about the Supreme Court saying they can't arrest people for, you know, covering NSA buildings, and the police backed off just by saying, look, we're not your slaves. We're here. We're allowed to show this. That is a great idea. We can't lead every fight, though. I mean, and my reporters have been down there. I've been down there. We've been down there over and over again the last 5 years while they were building it, and then it was completed 2 years ago. It took them 3 years to build it. All of our listeners listening right now on 90.1, listening on the internet in Texas, you should all be there at high noon at the main entrance. You know, it's just a public sidewalk there to protest the NSA. They don't even want a discussion that they're there illegally listening to everything we're doing, not to stop terrorism. Our government runs Al-Qaeda.
That's right.
Go there. Cover that. Print off where it's not illegal to film government buildings, and hand them those Washington Post articles, you know, when they're there. Don't just go to the big data center, spy center, Nazi center that they're building in Utah. Go to the one in Fort Meade, Maryland. Go to the one in San Antonio, Texas. Everybody, high noon on Saturday. It's time for you to be the leaders. David Knight, am I coming through to you clear?
Yes, very, very much so. And there's one thing I didn't read from this announcement that we got from Joel Skousen. He said, please join Dr. A. True Ott, myself, and others as we gather, and this is where it is, near the intersection of Redwood Road and the access road to the facility that's just south of Camp Williams. And that rally is going to be at 9 a.m. tomorrow, 4th of July, a peaceful rally to draw attention to the capability and the threat posed by this establishment. That's something we probably should get out on the website, because we're just in overdrive right now. Yeah, that's a key thing. That's
By the way, why don't we call Skousen right now, his cell, everything, and see if we can get 10 minutes on this on the nightly news? Because I said Saturday, July 4th, the day to do it. It's just that I don't think on my show we can organize something in San Antonio in Maryland. I think we should have mourning the death of America Saturday. And again, I'm not going to be there. Our crew's overworked. We're in the front lines. We need relief. We need you out there. There will be local media coverage as the American people stand up to this criminal takeover. But absolutely, everybody should be there tomorrow outside Salt Lake City, Utah, with real American patriots. If you live in Utah or surrounding areas, don't go get drunk. Don't go watch stupid fireworks. Don't go sit there and watch F-16s that are meant for you and your family, and drones. They don't have drones at these things, you know, flying over you. Now is the time to let them know that we're on the offense, because we've gone from them trying to intimidate people and saying you can't go cover the NSA to them now admitting that, of course, you're allowed to videotape the NSA. This is the lawlessness of these tyrants. Look, they've got re-education camps built. That's in the official FEMA documents. That's in the Army manuals. They'll put us in these if they can normalize it and get the police and military to go along with it. We're fighting an info war so that they can't normalize all of this right now. We are in a total 150% emergency situation as everything is confirmed. I just wanted to say this. I had the epiphany was this. You know, they admit Facebook's hooked in with the CIA and the NSA, David Knight, and listeners. And this happened 3 years ago to us at Infowars.com. It happened to Darren McBreen last year. Now it's finally in the news. When you go to log into your Facebook that they know is yours, they won't just make you show them your driver's license now and scan it and send it to them as they made us do. They'll say, are these your high school friends? Are these your college buddies at some party I was at, 20 years ago? And I don't remember these guys' names, but it was them. It reminded me of their names. They now have data that far back uploaded, and what it's doing is they admit Facebook is teamed up with the NSA and DARPA trying to build an artificial intelligence. Google's doing it as well. When the computer makes you and give it.
And we just lost Alex there. A large part of that's going on with Facebook is really training. And we're trying to educate people to not be trained by the government to give up your privacy, to think that it isn't any big deal if the government knows every detail of your life. And we got you back now, Alex. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Sorry, we had a drop. It dropped at the absolute key point. The point is that Google, Facebook, when it shows you your high school buddies or your college buddies or your friends from 5 years ago and makes you identify who they are for it, that's like police, bringing you in for questioning, but it's a computer doing it. And so the computer is reaching out in nodes, giving HUMAT, making you a node. So see, it's beyond Google glasses where you're now an agent of Google going around videotaping everybody in live time, feeding it back to the NSA. People go in the bathroom or people go to a meeting or people wherever. You are now yourself seen as smart dust, your own body, your own future, your own everything, part of the machine. We are already being out this is happening, but I had the epiphany we've already covered that this is already going on. And I really understood it when I was talking on the air yesterday about these Marines who were friends of some of my friends. I'll just leave it at that. And they said, would you like to meet with some Marines? This is like 12 years ago or 10 years ago. No, I guess longer than that now. Yeah, no, it was a year and a half after I put out Police State 2000. And show.
Oh, are you there, Alex?
The VHS screen captured.
Okay,
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah. Faded out for just a second there, but go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so you can't hear me. Yeah, just next time it cuts out, I'll just keep going. Listen, the point here is that...
He was just making the point, and it just dropped out. I think we've lost him this time. Well, it is very important that people understand what is really going to happen with this Utah data center and with the government mining and storing everything. Because the capacity that they have there, as we pointed out before, is yottabytes or yottabytes, however you want to pronounce it. It's 1 trillion terabytes. To give you an idea how much that is, we've talked about this before. If you just take a small drive that's only about 2 inches wide, a 2 terabyte drive that's easily available as a consumer, an external drive that is available for about $80 and 2 inches wide. If you stacked 1 trillion of those together in a long line, it would extend well past the moon, almost all the way to Mars. That's the kind of capacity that they have. They want to record everything about you. And you should ask yourself, what kind of person wants to store that, and how are they going to use that? Will they use it to blackmail you? Will they use it to blackmail Supreme Court judges? Will they use it to blackmail presidents? How will they use this? Will they data mine it automatically? And if they data mine it automatically, are they going to falsely identify you as someone who's committed a crime? That is always a risk there. And if they don't falsely identify you as a crime, think about the fact how many felonies you probably commit every day without even realizing it. As we covered here not too long ago, we had a fellow who was charged with multiple felony accounts for releasing multiple balloons on a beach in commemoration of his wife's and he and his wife's anniversary. And we've got Alex back on the phone. Alex, you were just about to make the point, and it went out on you. Go ahead and make that point now.
Well, it's just that I didn't get what these Marine Corps officers were telling me. I'm now back on phone. I didn't get what they were telling me 12 years ago, that don't you get it? Anything you do, we feed into computers and make you part of the exercise. It's one big computer. And I didn't understand that then. Now I understand. This is like an alien takeover. This is like foreign spaceships landed and are doing this. It's globalists using artificial intelligence, waging absolute war on us, but it's all incremental and low intensity, and so people don't realize it. I mean, this is insane what they're doing. It's so over the top, and I appreciate you doing an exemplary job, David. It's such an honor to have you working with us and the entire team. And I know that we're all stressed out there at the office, but men and women, we're doing historic work here, and we're on target. That's why we're under attack. So I beg our listeners to pray for Infowars, to pray for all our reporters, to pray for me and my family. And just God bless you all. I hope everybody has a great tomorrow, and I hope that we wake people up coming up. This is historic information.
We're on the
march. Photos and video.
The empire. What the military is doing. Then why is the military doing that? Why don't they practice somewhere where they are not going to be endangering the public in the first place? The public has every much a right to be there, as does the military. But of course, this is a man in uniform. And in the USA today, you're supposed to do anything anyone in a uniform tells you to do. And if you don't, they're going to get rough with you. So he doesn't listen to the military guy. The military guy calls a cop over, and basically the cop says, you have to leave. He says, why? He says, you're in the way of this. And they talk about it being he says, this is a public area. You've got to go. He goes, it's a public area. I have a right to be here. And so then he just starts throwing him around and arresting him. We see this happening over and over again, and this is something that's hopefully this guy will sue them for false arrest. We see this happening in many, many jurisdictions, and the amount of money that is going out from different city locations is just amazing, because they never punish the police, even when they do something really egregious. We had the video yesterday that I'm sure you saw, that the fellow who was filming the cops doing an exercise, and once he complied with them, they came over and got rough with him. And then the dog that he had put, that he was walking with him, that jumped out of the car to protect him, and the cop just shoots the dog. It's just absolutely amazing what they do. And if you see the video, the cop is not being threatened at all by the dog. But we have other cases here that just broke out. We have a Zerbe family just won $6.5 million because they had a son who was killed because he had a nozzle in his hand. That's right. The neighbors thought that he had a pistol, but he had a garden hose nozzle in his hand. The police came up and started giving him orders. He didn't immediately comply because he wasn't sure what they were asking, and they just opened fire because they thought that he was pointing that nozzle at them, and they killed him. And the family won $6.5 million award. The mother says, the money doesn't bring my son back, which is all we wanted. And it also, the judgment also does not take these cops who did that out of service. And the police department is absolutely unrepentant on it. This is what the Long Beach police chief, Jim McDonnell, said. He was in court for the verdict, and he was disappointed by the decision. You know, they had every right to shoot somebody who pointed a garden hose nozzle at them. Their actions, we believe, were an immediate defense of their life, talking about the cops. He said, that's the way we judge, based on the circumstances known to them at the time. You see, if the police feel at all threatened, they feel that they can shoot you, they're slaves. They can do anything to you. We had the case just about a week and a half ago, about the young lady who was autistic, 11-year-old girl that was autistic, found wandering down the highway, and she was tasered by a police officer. Now, hang on, because at the bottom of the hour, we're going to have a great rant from Gerald Celente about the state of America, and you don't want to miss that. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight filling in for Alex. It is Wednesday, July 3rd, 2013. Now, before we get started, I want to give a plug here to one of our sponsors who helps keep this operation going, and that's Infidel Body Armor. InfidelBodyArmor.com stops hundreds of rounds from AK-47, M4, 3060, 308, and more. And it is available at InfidelBodyArmor.com. That's 888-608-6605. Infidel Body Armor. That stuff is solid. I mean, it keeps taking the hits. Now, we were just talking before the break about a police judgment where they got $6.5 million for the wrongful death of a man who is merely holding a garden nozzle. We have another one coming out of Hawthorne Police Department, paid $1 million to settle a lawsuit in which it was alleged that a man was kicked in the face while handcuffed, then falsely prosecuted along with his wife to cover up the brutality. So we've got a lot of violate any rules. And, you know, here in Texas, around Austin, they've announced that it's going to be a no-refusal weekend. Yes, to celebrate our freedoms, the police are going to be pulling people over and demanding to draw blood from you. And if you don't, they'll just get brutal, and they'll do it anyway. They're not going to take a refusal. So if you insist on your Fourth Amendment rights and you say that you're going to refuse that, just understand that these are people. What we have here is really a standing army, isn't it? We have a standing army of cops. You know, sheriffs are elected, but the police chiefs are not elected, and they're there to enforce policy. No matter how arbitrary that policy is, no matter how capricious it is enforced, they're going to do that. And we've got a couple of stories here today. As a matter of fact, we've got a video coming up here. This happened just this last weekend, and it was in Charlotte, North Carolina. And the military was conducting an unannounced drill, as they're doing more and more frequently here. Drilling in the U.S. cities. Why? Because they practice where they're actually going to be doing things. As one military expert who was questioned about why they're doing all these military drills in the city, he said, well, if you're going to conduct operations in the mountains, you practice in the mountains. If you're going to do it at the beach, you practice at the beach. And he just left it there, right? And of course, they're not doing this for urban warfare in other countries, because I don't think they expect that they're going to have the cooperation and support of the police when they invade, let's say, Syria or Iran. So this is clearly something that they're setting up for domestic use. They're buying massive amounts of ammunition. And here in in Charlotte, they have a military drill going, and this fellow starts to film it. And take a look at this video. He sees a couple of helicopters that are coming down, so he starts filming it. And we've reduced this. So if you go to see this video, it's probably about 15, 16 minutes. We've reduced it about a minute and a half. And they're about to land here. The helicopters are coming down. And once they land, troops are going to jump out, take positions around the helicopter, and conduct this drill. And then he's got a officer who comes over to him at about the 13-minute point, which we're going to skip to. And this officer has been telling him that he needs to leave because it's not safe. And he says, I have a right to be here. It's a public area. Here it is. It's coming up. There's a couple of more helicopters still up in the air. So there's several helicopters on the ground, still more helicopters in the air. It's a fairly large... Here he is. He's talking now.
I'm breaking no laws.
All right, you just go ahead and go.
I'm breaking no laws.
I'm trespassing at this time.
I am not. This is public-owned property, and I am not trespassing.
Sir, look, I'm asking you to leave.
Now here's a cop.
And
this
what
is a
law
cop.
am I violating by standing here?
Trespassing.
This is public property.
This is city property.
This is city property owned by the public, and I'm breaking no laws.
All right, well, now I'm telling you to leave.
Why is that?
I'm telling you to leave.
And give me a reason for that.
1305, 1325 down here.
Give me a reason that you're asking. Hey, wait.
Now you are.
Now he takes him down. He's not going to give him a reason. The only reason he has is...
No law. You asked me what? You leave public property?
This place has been permitted out for our use. It's
not private. You cannot take my property.
So what happens with this video as it goes on, the cop roughs him up and he takes his camera out, he throws it on the ground, evidently trying to break it so they couldn't have a record of what had just happened. And you can hear the guy say, "Are you serious? Why are you throwing my camera on the ground?" And you can just see the camera staring at the sky at that point. But basically what was happening in that video is first the military guy comes over and says, "You got to leave the area." He says, "It's a public area." And the military guy says, "Well, it's dangerous for you to be here." Well, here's my question. If it's dangerous for civilians, if it's dangerous for the public to be in a public area like that because...
It is your PrisonPlanet.tv memberships that fund so much of what we do here in this operation. And then we're more than happy for the TV show after it's aired live, then be leaked out onto the web to tens of millions of people. That's our goal.
Welcome to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight filling in for Alex. It is Wednesday, July 3rd, 2013. We got a lot to talk about today. This is our last show that is live before 4th of July. Tomorrow we're going to have a best of show that's put together. So today we're going to want to talk to you, the public. You know, we've said many times on this show, Alex says it all the time, you are the resistance. Well, there's a lot that should be resisted right now that the government is doing. And so I want to hear from you and find out exactly what your plans are to do, either tomorrow or in the near future. Pick a scandal. Do something about it. Do something locally. Everything doesn't come out of just Washington. There's a lot that can be done locally. We've got stories here about people working in Florida to get rid of red light cameras. I mean, you can start at that low a level, work your way up. It doesn't have to start at the top. We have so many things that are going on in Washington and have been going on in Washington. And I think when we look at the Declaration of Independence, we see an echo of what is going on today. Much of what they were complaining about, the multiplication of offices to harass the people and eat out their substance. And they go down and they list these things. We're going to talk about that. The different things that the government is doing now, essentially the same things they did then. The difference is that we have technology today that makes what the government does much more dangerous, much more comprehensive, much more difficult even to detect. And we have a government that believes that it should do everything in secret. You know, secret courts were struck down after the Star Chamber, and even the Fifth Amendment is a reaction to the Star Chamber that they had in England. It was a memory of people. They understood how tyranny worked. We have become complacent. We don't believe that it can happen here, but we have an article that we're going to be going over that we have intelligence people who have talked about exactly what is happening now, the patterns that are established. People who were with the East German Stasi say they would love to have this kind of technology at their hands in those days. And we got people who've been warning about it for 40 years. There's an article we got coming up. But in this segment, I want to talk about first, before we get on to domestic news, what's going on in Egypt. And we've got a article up on Infowars.com from Paul Joseph Watson. Egyptian protesters are blaming Obama for the Morsi dictatorship. And it's pretty amazing when you look at this. If you've got the monitor there, if you go to our website, you need to look at the collection of pictures of what people are holding up there. I'll read some of these out for the radio audience here. Wake up, America. Obama backs up a fascist regime in Egypt. The next one, Obama supports terrorism. Hey, Rachel Maddow, you know, that's the Egyptian people who are living under this understand what's going on. They disagree with you. You know, you criticized Alex Jones because he talked about how the American government, not just Obama, but Bush as well, established the Mujahideen, which turned into Al-Qaeda, how we're arming them, how we're providing for their financial benefits with the poppy seed trade in Afghanistan. That's how they fund their terrorism. And we've been conducting terrorism abroad quite a bit. And so when they fund these dictatorships, when they fund Al-Qaeda to take over Libya, yeah, Obama is supporting terrorism for sure. He's doing it in Syria of police brutality, a lot of things that the police are doing that they never get disciplined for, they never get thrown out. But we have a report here from a good cop who got up at a city council meeting and talked about an upcoming legislation that they were proposing. And listen to what he has to say. His name is Aaron Weiss, an Iraq combat vet and a law enforcement officer.
Hello, my name is Aaron Weiss, and I live in the town of Poughkeepsie. I'm a combat veteran of Iraq, and I'm also a law enforcement officer. I attended the Public Safety Committee's last meeting in regards to this resolution, but I didn't say anything because I wanted to hear what everyone else had to say. And I heard some shocking things from some people and some legislators. They said that it took a lot of courage to pass this SAFE Act. Apparently my definition of courage differs from yours. You see, if it was really so courageous a bill and it took so much courage to pass it, then why was it done in the middle of the night when no one could see it or read it? That's not courage. That's a mafia-style sit-down and divvy up what's good for the bosses. Courage is taking the right and true course of action, not the politically expedient one. And anyone who is proud of this law must also be proud of the Patriot Act, the TSA, imprisoning Japanese citizens in World War II, since all these actions were spurred on by emotional fear and rammed through in the name of public safety. Another issue is the insistence of certain people to stand on the graves of dead children and challenge those that disagree to say it to the parents' faces. Well, I, for one, will pick up that gauntlet. First off, why is dead children your battle cry? You didn't say anything about the hundreds of Chicago children being killed, and for some reason you only scream when it happens to wealthy white ones. And yes, I will say to anyone's face, my right is more important than your dead, because I fought for it firsthand. I washed the blood of my friends out of my Humvee, and I picked up their mangled bodies, and I fought day in and day out. I did more things that you people can't imagine. So yeah, my right trumps your dead. I earned it in blood. I gave up a lot for this country, including my youth, and better men than me gave up a whole lot more, so that all you, myself included, could enjoy the rights that are guaranteed to us in our Constitution and Bill of Rights. And we didn't go through all that to come back home and watch the surrender of what we fought for happen based on the demented actions of a couple madmen. So in closing, I would like to address specifically the legislators we all know who are going to vote against this resolution. I understand you will vote against this resolution based on some misguided sense of the public good. However, as a law enforcement officer, I'm curious to know about your true resolve. Since voting to take away someone's rights is totally different than being asked to enforce it, I want you to consider this. If you support the SAFE Act so wholeheartedly, are you willing to stand with law enforcement members and lead from the front to enforcement? And what I mean by that is if a constituent of yours feels so alienated by this law and the manner in which it was passed that they refuse to comply with it, are you willing to stack up on their front door and go in first? I bet if a clause was in this bill that required you, the elected leadership, our elected leaders, to go in the door first, I bet you would not be so steadfast.
That's right. And listen to this. What you don't hear at the very end of that video is that the people he was addressing there, the government officials who are proposing this gun confiscation plan, They wanted everybody to stop clapping. They really wanted to quiet that down pretty quickly. But he brings up a point. He fought. Others fought for our liberties. They put their lives on the line. And yet we're told that all they have to do today is just scare us with a possibility that we might not be safe if they don't take this away from us or that away from us or deny us of our Fourth Amendment protections or put their hands all over our bodies. We're told that they have to do that so that we can be safe. I'm reminded of that series that you see on YouTube, How It Should Have Ended. I guess that's how it should have ended in World War II. I guess they should have had a parade of all of Hitler's weapons. And we should have all looked at that and said, wow, you know, for our safety, I guess we ought to just give up and throw down and let him take over the country because, you know, we could all get hurt. That wasn't the way this country has run before. But people are all too willing to do that. Stick around. We're going to hear what Gerald Celente as well. The next one, Obama supports dictator Morsi. We know what you did last summer. Go home to Obama Island. It's really amazing. There's even a picture here comparing how Morsi's logo looks exactly like Obama's 08 logo. And then there's a long sign here from one guy. He says, from Tahrir Square to the U.S. media and the Muslim Brotherhood. Obama, you jerk. Muslim brothers are killing Egyptians, so how come they can guarantee you the security of Israel? Exactly. All we're doing with our foreign policy is fomenting war and death all over the globe. We're not providing security or safety for anybody. We're going to be right back, so stay tuned. It's an exciting show today. Welcome to the Alex Jones Show. It's Wednesday, July 3rd, 2013. I'm David Knight, filling in for Alex. Now, our questions are going to be for you, really, today. We want to know what you're going to do to resist tyranny. You know, our country celebrates the Declaration of Independence tomorrow. We have fireworks that celebrate how we fought for that independence, how we won that independence. It's not given to us. You know, it was Jefferson writing to Lafayette. He said, we are not to expect to be translated from a state of despotism to a state of liberty on a featherbed. Something has to be done about that. Now, we all enjoy the time that we have with our families, a vacation time. While you're doing that, you need to be thinking about what you're going to do about the kinds of abuses of power, the abuses of authority that we see increasing and accelerating and multiplying out of Washington. And so we're going to talk to you about that. We know that there are some people who have some plans. We've got a press release that we're going to be talking about restoring the Fourth Amendment. It's going to be rallies all over the country on the 4th of July to reestablish the Fourth Amendment. There are going to be some rallies coming up in the middle of July talking about jobs and how that's going to be impacted by the proposed immigration bill. So a lot of people have picked issues. The one about protecting the Fourth on the 4th of July is a really good one. That's coming up tomorrow. So we're going to talk about that. You can see where that's going to be happening in your area. If you're involved with that, we want you to let us know about that. But one of the things that has bothered me in the past on the 4th of July, and it's why we're not going to be going to any 4th of July fireworks with my family. Last time we went, it was just such an oppressive police state. I mean, the dissonance there about getting together on a day to celebrate your freedom and independence, and instead you're surrounded by an army of cops. We went to a very small town to see a fireworks display, and we just could not believe the number of cop cars that were there. I didn't know that small town had that many cop cars. And it wasn't just cops. They had other people in kind of quasi-military uniforms with guns on. And they were just walking around like, as Alex would say, sticking their jaws out, sticking out their chest. They were just looking for something to do, watching all of us to see if we were going to violate some rule of theirs. It was just pathetic. I've never seen anything like it. I don't want to go to a public celebration like that because of that kind of attitude. Out of Ohio, we've got an article on Infowars from Anthony Gucciardi. An Ohio city is banning fireworks, drinks, grills, and enacts a mandatory bag search for the 4th of July. And listen to this. The following rules will be in effect at Lakewood Park on the 4th of July. All generators, propane, and gas-fueled grills are prohibited. All tents and shelters are prohibited. You know how dangerous tents and shelters are. Police will be conducting searches of bags and coolers for reasons of public safety. No alcoholic beverages are permitted at any time throughout the year. No personal fireworks. This includes novelty fireworks like sparklers. No dogs or pets of any kind. And the skate park, tennis courts, and basketball courts will be closed. So, it's basically, is there anything you can do there? And I'm sure they will have an army of police bugging their eyes out at everybody there to see if they're going to violate